Hello, good afternoon everyone. If you have any questions from the previous topics or if anything you'd like to ask. Some small topics were left from the previous class. So Department of Biotechnology has developed a portal. Problem ये था कि biotechnology is a very wide branch. It involves so many things, and often because we are talking about developing various types of medicine with the help of microorganism or part of plants or animals, you require various type of approvals. So many research agencies as well as many pharma companies had this continuous complaint that all the approvals, it takes up a lot of time. So to smoothen the entire process, Department of Biotechnology has developed a portal. Name of the portal is BioWrap. The purpose of BioWrap is that from a single portal, जितने भी regulatory approvals हैं आप इससे use कर सकते हो. Simple. To smoothen the entire process of approval, this portal has been developed by biotechnology. Not as such a very important topic, but the fundamental part, the fundamental thing which you have to know in this topic is this concept of molecular motor. That the fact that you can move your organs, you cannot move from here, but you can move your organ. That movement also is facilitated by certain type of molecules, and they are actually proteins. And those proteins, of course, every type of protein has to be built with the help of DNA. So this question is research is simply that scientists have built a molecular scale motor using the DNA origami method, class of proteins that drive intracellular movement. So we are talking about developing very small biological molecules which can help in molecular motion, very similar to how we can move different type of organ with the help of certain type of proteins. Although I do not think this is a very important topic as such. There are some topics of medicine. ये जो context है, I think this context you should know, even though it is a factual information, but you should know that recently World Health Organization director, he led the foundation for Global Center for Traditional Medicine at Jamnagar in Gujarat. Jamnagar is very famous for having some of the great Ayurvedic institutes, and because of that this center of traditional medicine has been established at Jamnagar in Gujarat. So the traditional medicine, I'm very sure all of you have some idea about traditional medicine. Traditional medicine simply means that we are talking about that from a particular area based on the experiences. So sum total of all the knowledge which you have acquired based on different type of trials and errors regarding diagnosing, treating physical as well as mental disorder. Because India has a very rich civilizational history and we have a civilizational continuity. So a lot of information, a lot of knowledge from the past that still has survived. The three most famous medicine system, which is Ayurveda, Siddha and Suva Rigpa, they are of course very important. So we have a dedicated ministry called Ministry of Ayush, and Ministry of Ayush is responsible for ensuring that traditional medicine systems becomes more and more popular, and it also becomes more and more standardized. That second part is also equally important. So Ayush का जो full form है, that emerges from Ayurveda, Unani, Yoga, Siddha, right, homeopathy. Apart from all the names I have told you, you also have to know few other names. For example, so Ayurveda, Yoga, Unani, Siddha, homeopathy, Sowa Rigpa, naturopathy also. These are the systems of medicines which have been recognized by Government of India. Now, Ayurveda, Yoga, Siddha, and even Sowa Rigpa, they are indigenous. So they were developed into India or in the Indian subcontinent region. Ayurveda especially, it's still very popular in almost entire of India. Now Siddha is very similar to Ayurveda, except that Siddha practices are much more popular into southern India, but they are very similar, and Sowa Rigpa is also very similar, and Sowa Rigpa is very popular in Himalayan states. So it is a Tibetan form of, it's a Tibetan traditional medicine system, but in Himalayan states such as Uttarakhand or Sikkim or Arunachal Pradesh, this is actually a very famous method of medicine. But that is also very similar to Ayurveda, how it approaches diseases or how it diagnoses diseases. Yoga, frankly, yoga does not prescribe medicine. Yoga is much more than typical system of medicine. Yoga in itself is a philosophy. However, unfortunately, we think of yoga as so we associate yoga simply with asanas and pranayams, but that is a very small part of yoga. Yoga is a well-developed philosophy, but nonetheless, that has also been recognized as system of traditional medicine. Unani, that originated, as the name suggests, in Greece. Greece का जो Arab translation है, that is Yunan. So it actually became, almost this knowledge was lost, but this knowledge became came into existence because of Arab merchants, Arab travelers, and from Arab and Persian region, with the Delhi Sultanate, with Mughals, this system became very famous into India also. And homeopathy is also not Indian. A German doctor was responsible for developing homeopathy. In any case, the reason why this topic is important, that traditional medicine system can be very useful, especially in primary health care, that at very basic level. जैसे Ayurveda जो है, Ayurveda is not just about medicine. Ayurveda is in itself a way of living life, that what you should eat, what you should not eat, when you should sleep, when you should eat, things like that. So it is a way of living life. The problem is that in all such traditional medicine system, there is a lack of standardization. That lack of standardization leads to that anyone can claim to be a traditional medicine practitioner. तो एक बहुत हिंदी में फेमस कहावत हम बोलते हैं ना, नीम हकीम खतरा जान. तो anyone, if anyone can become हकीम और वैद्य, तो वैद्य का बनने का एक क्राइटेरिया क्या है कि आपके फादर वैद्य थे, आप भी वैद्य बन जाओ. So to stop such type of practices where there is a proper standardization, who can become a medicine practitioner, what type of medicines should be allowed, not exactly as similar as the regulatory scenario which we have for modern medicine, but the goal here is that we have to standardize it. It shouldn't be that somebody has made an opinion and based on that people are prescribing herbal medicine. तो ये भी एक आजकल ट्रेंड चल रहा है ना कि हर्बल मेडिसिन के नाम पे लोग कुछ भी बेच रहे हैं, लोग कुछ भी खरीद रहे हैं. एक और बहुत बड़ा प्रॉब्लम है दैट देयर आर claims, very random claims without any study, any scientific study that if those claims are authentic or not. So to tackle these issues, ये जो center है, this center is very very important. Global Center for Traditional Medicine at Jamnagar. We have a National Ayush Mission also. There are various schemes. Not very sure if this topic is very important, but nonetheless, the Food Safety and Standards Authority of India hai, by the way, that is an organization which works under Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. So the Food Safety and Standards Authority of India hai, they have formulated regulation for Ayurveda Ahar products. Different from medicines. Ayurvedic medicines, unka jo set of regulation hai, that is very different. But there are many companies and many organizations which make Ayurveda Ahar, Ayurvedic food, and they claim against certain things that it can have certain benefits, health benefits, but we are not talking about curing a disease with the help of Ayurvedic medicine. We are talking about Ayurvedic food, But Ayurvedic food also has to be properly regulated, very similar to any type of food which you go and buy. You are hoping for that proper food testing has been done, there are no harmful chemicals, etc., etc. So FSSAI has come up with set of regulation Ayurveda Ahar product ke liye. There will be a proper category known as Ayurveda Ahar category, and it is different from medicinal products. उनके लिए जो regulation है वो अलग है, जो आयुर्वेदिक food का जो regulation है वो अलग है. There is a very famous initiative of Ministry of Ayush called Traditional Knowledge Digital Library, a pioneer initiative of this ministry. The objective of this initiative is that India का जो traditional system है वो बहुत rich रहा है. Ayurvedic knowledge, Siddha knowledge, Soharikpa, the type of biological resources which are found in India, that is also very rich. But from time to time we have found out that many MNCs, private companies, multinational companies belonging to different countries, they will claim that they have discovered something, and that something is already part of India's traditional knowledge system. And there are many examples like that. For example, a very famous example which did emerge is of turmeric, that a private company in US tried to patent the wound healing properties of turmeric. We have known that for centuries. Another company in Europe tried to patent antifungal properties of neem. We have again known that for centuries. In both the cases, Government of India fought cases at international forums, and both of those patents were cancelled. But it was also realized that we cannot allow that to happen. One of the reason, Government of India realized that one of the reason India's knowledge is being misappropriated by these private companies, that is their discovery. They have discovered it, so that is why they are going to get patent for it, because the moment you get a patent, then you have a monopoly for 20 years. Only you can make that product. So first, patent is given for any new knowledge which hasn't existed before. यहीं पे fail हो गया कि clearly wound healing properties of turmeric is not a new knowledge, because that has been part of Indian knowledge tradition for thousands of years. First. Second, the moment you get a patent, then you are basically saying that we have monopoly for 20 years. आपको जब भी पेटेंट मिलता है तो क्या 20 साल तक सिर्फ आप वो प्रोड्यूस बनाओगे, कोई और नहीं बना सकता है. So for 20 years you have this monopoly, so you are denying something which you cannot actually claim credit for, and you are still denying other people that you cannot make the same product. So clearly that Government of India, it was not acceptable for Government of India, and we went and fought cases. In both the cases we emerged victorious, but a need was felt that we need to have some sort of initiative. So with this objective in mind, Government of India started this TKDL, Traditional Knowledge Digital Library. TKDL simply means that जो भी हमारा traditional knowledge है, that exists into local languages, it exists into Sanskrit or Arabic, Persian, Tamil, Urdu. So ये जो local languages है, it needs to be translated into international languages, and we have to create a digital library. So as the name suggests, this is a digital library. As of now, there are about 4 lakh medicinal formulations which have been curated properly into a digital format. And ये जो पूरा portal है, जो TKDL है, जो digital library है, this access is given at international patent offices. तो कोई भी मान लो patent claim करता है that this is a new knowledge, then patent examiners can go through this database with the help of keywords. They can find out that if it already is part of TKDL, because if it is, then this patent will be rejected. So this has been a very important initiative, because Government of India has avoided lot of legal battles. Hundreds of patents have been either rejected or modified at global patent offices because this already was part of TKDL database. Now why this topic is in news? Till now TKDL database was restricted to 14 patent offices in US, Chile, Australia, Japan. Many countries have this TKDL access agreement with Ministry of Ayush. Countries के लिए भी beneficial है, because government अगर case file करती है तो government of India के लिए भी beneficial है, that हमारा time जा रहा है, resource जा रहा है. Even companies, other countries, that is beneficial for them also, because their time, their resources also is being wasted. So it is a win-win situation that go through TKDL. If it is already part of this knowledge, then patent will be either modified or will be rejected also. And as of now, hundreds of patents have been rejected at global patent offices with this initiative. So the topic is in news because it had been a very limited access was given to few patent offices of the world. Government is planning to expand that this access will be given at even more offices, so that even in other countries we can ensure that India's knowledge is not being misappropriated. So all of this knowledge of Ayurveda, Unani, Siddha, Soa, Rigpa, Yoga, they have been translated into 5 international languages: English, German, French, Japanese and Spanish. If you want to remember, I don't think itne detail mein UPSC पूछेगी, but rather than remembering all of the languages, Mandarin for example is not in the list, right? Mandarin is list mein nahi hai. Mandarin, which is the most spoken language in China, that is not in the list. So often agar list yaad rakhna ho, to I always find that such type of method is more useful. That something you may think that should be, but it is not. So just remember that a particular thing is not in the list, apart from what is in the list. Very similar to a body known as Indian Pharmacopoeia Commission, which works under Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. जो इंडियन फार्माकोपिया कमीशन है, उसका जो मेन पर्पस ये है कि कोई भी मेडिसिन, वॉट एवर मेडिसिन इज बीइंग सोल्ड इनटू मार्केट, प्रॉपर एक रेगुलेटरी प्रोसीज्योर है, प्रॉपर ट्रायल्स है, ऑल ऑफ देम हैव बीन फॉलोड as per rules and regulations. Now very similar to that, Ministry of Ayush has this organization called Pharmacopoeia Commission for Indian Medicine and Homeopathy. So first, it is not same as Indian Pharmacopoeia Commission. Here this body has similar mandate, however for traditional medicine system, for Ayurvedic medicine, homeopathic medicine, but it has similar mandate and it works under Ministry of Society. This body works under Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. So ये difference जो है वो clear होना चाहिए. Point is very simple, that there is a body called Indian Pharmacopoeia Commission which works under Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. Indian Pharmacopoeia Commission का जो mandate है, जो main mandate है, वो ये है that whatever medicine you buy, आप जो भी खरीदने जा रहे हो, that medicine ऐसे ही नहीं वो prove हो जाता है. It has to go through many regulatory procedures, lot of trials happen. So Pharmacopoeia Commission has this mandate that whatever rules and regulations, whatever regulatory requirements are there, they are properly followed. But this body works under Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. जो मिनिस्ट्री, ये फार्माकोपिया कमीशन फॉर इंडियन मेडिसिन एंड होम्योपैथी जो है, that has a similar mandate, that formulations and act as a central drug testing lab for Indian medicine, traditional medicine and homeopathy. So it has a similar medicine, but that is limited to traditional medicine system, and it works under Ministry of Ayush. Tuberculosis is a bacterial disease. There are a few things which you have to know about tuberculosis. So why this topic is in news? Because World Health Organization has released some guideline, national strategic planning for tuberculosis. Few things you have to know. It is a bacterial disease. There is a very famous vaccine called BCG, very old vaccine also, which is given at the time of birth. But here is the problem, that this vaccine ka jo effectiveness hai, that is actually reducing. And that reduction of efficiency is simply because that tuberculosis has developed, the bacteria has developed many strains, and many of those strains are no longer they can be killed by antibiotics, which we generally take to kill them. So this issue is called antimicrobial resistance, जो I think topic में आपके दे भी रखा है आगे. हाँ, next topic ही दे ही रखा है आपका antimicrobial resistance. But there are many variants of this bacteria, and these variants cannot be killed by few typical antibiotics which we generally take to kill them. And because of that, you have like this multi-drug resistance tuberculosis, or extensively drug resistance, or even total drug resistance tuberculosis, which basically means that none of the antibiotics are going to work. Body cannot fight off this infection. What is going to happen? It is going to escalate the entire death process. Such cases will often lead to death, and a very bad death for that matter. So thankfully the number of total drug resistant cases, that is not very high into India. However, unfortunately this number, multi drug resistance cases, that is actually increasing. And that is why we have to adopt a different approach to tackle the problem of tuberculosis. Why? And different approach is also very important because होगा ये कि शुरू के time में onset of disease, the disease is very similar to other type of cough. So people often ignore it. Another problem is that there is a lot of social stigma associated with tuberculosis. The moment you have TB, there is a social stigma because it is also airborne disease. You can, for example, by coughing, you can spread it to other people. But then people associate a social stigma with it. So people do not like to be diagnosed with tuberculosis. So they will often delay their diagnosis. And that delaying diagnosis, that leads to a proper onset of disease, and that can become very dangerous. In the initial stage, taking care of that is easier. Later stages, taking care of that will be more difficult. So a lot of steps have been taken by Government of India. For example, we have a national strategic plan, National Tuberculosis Elimination Program. We have a portal called नीछे portal. TB का जो हिंदी है उसको हम क्षय रोग बोलते हैं. So यहाँ से आपको याद रखने की भी जरूरत नहीं है. नीछे portal और नीछे पोषण योजना और नीछे portal. So this has information about TB, every aspect of TB. You can find that on नीछे portal. There is a नीछे पोषण योजना also, that nutritional support which has to be given to TB patients. So Government of India is very serious about reducing the burden of tuberculosis in this country. TB detection kit for the first time from India, it has been developed, named as PathoDetect. Similarly, a new type of drug regime is in trial right now, BPAL, and BPAL basically involves 3 newer antibiotics. The goal here is that ये जो new antibiotics and they can also take care of this multi-drug resistance tuberculosis. PCG, ये हमारे यूनिवर्सल इम्यूनाइजेशन प्रोग्राम का पार्ट है. Whenever a baby is born, in fact, many public hospitals you will find it for free also, and of course, आप पे करके भी ले सकते हो. But because it is part of our universal immunization program, it is available for free at all the public hospitals. If I am not mistaken, it is not exactly, so it is not recombinant vaccine. I think it's not conjugate. There is a new conjugate vaccine of TB, which was that was for typhoid. It should be live attenuated. I'm not very sure about it. Please confirm it. The question is that what type of vaccine is BCG? If I'm not sure, but I think it should be live attenuated vaccine. That a strain of bacteria, but in weakened form, and then you basically take this vaccine so that body can develop proper immune response against it. So either it should be live attenuated or maybe it is inactivated. Can you confirm this? Sorry? Live attenuated, yeah? Or it is a live attenuated vaccine. I don't think so. Especially TB के लिए शायद. For TB you should. For COVID you should definitely, because it is in news. So for diseases which are in news, then what type of vaccine we are talking about, maybe that can be a useful information. In malaria also, because it is a new vaccine, so yes, that you should know. एंटीमाइक्रोबियल रेजिस्टेंस, इस पे यूपीएससी ने प्रीलिम्स में मेंस में दोनों जगह क्वेश्चन पास्ट में पूछ रखा है, बट स्टिल दिस इज एन इंपॉर्टेंट टॉपिक. It simply means that when microbial organisms, which are often pathogens, can cause diseases, and if microbial organisms have developed resistance against the very medicines we take to kill them, so often you will find that lot of bacterias or viruses or worms, they have developed resistance against the medicine, the very medicine we take to kill them. Our body is not able to fight off that infection. Often we have to take medicine. Most prominently it is witnessed into bacteria. Because of that we call these bacteria as drug resistant bacteria, or we also call them superbugs. Superbugs are those bacteria who have developed resistance against many antibiotics, that even with antibiotics you cannot kill them. देखो पहले बहुत बार एपिडेमिक्स पास्ट में बैक्टीरियाज के कारण आ रखे हैं. जो एंटीबायोटिक है दैट इज वेरी वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट, बिकॉज इवन विद वेरी स्मॉल डोजेज ऑफ एंटीबायोटिक यू कैन किल बैक्टीरियाज. But here is the problem: if you cannot kill them and your body cannot kill them, then it will again escalate your death process, which is a very dangerous situation. So that is why antimicrobial resistance, that where many bacteria, although it is not limited to bacteria, it can be witnessed among all type of microbes. But for bacteria, it is the most serious issue, because bacteria are also responsible for some of the deadly diseases right now we face. So antimicrobial resistance occurs because of many reasons. One reason can be very simple, that as bacteria evolve, बैक्टीरियाज कहाँ पे इवॉल्व होंगे? बैक्टीरियाज को जो न्यूट्रिशन है वो न्यूट्रिशन मिलता है बाय डिकम्पोजिंग ऑर्गेनिक मटेरियल, ऑर्गेनिक मास, जो भी बायोमास होगा किसी भी टाइप का, प्लांट, एनिमल, जो डिकम्पोजिशन होगा, बैक्टीरियाज विल मल्टीप्लाई. इन द प्रोसेस ऑफ मल्टीप्लिकेशन, इफ देयर इज अ वेरिएंट ऑफ बैक्टीरिया which becomes resistant to bacterias, which become resistant to antibiotics. Now if you take irregular use of antibiotics, this irregular use of antibiotics, what it will lead to? For example, you are not suffering from a bacterial disease, antibiotic की कोई ज़रूरत नहीं है, still you are taking antibiotic. What it will lead to? Lot of antibiotics, lot of bacteria in your body which are not causing any harm, or maybe they may be beneficial also, they will be killed. But at the same time, bacteria which have developed some resistance, they will not be, and now their number will increase. So our erratic uses of antibiotics as well as sanitation issue, जहाँ पे जितना ज़्यादा गंदगी होगा, especially biomedical waste, और in general जहाँ पे भी sanitation problem होंगे, वहाँ पे bacteria ज़्यादा decompose करेंगे and a variant can emerge. So it mainly occurs on two accounts. First, it occurs because of erratic uses of antibiotics, not just in human beings but also in animals. Very good example is poultry. Poultry farm जो है, that जो chicken है that lives into a very bad condition, बिल्कुल ही sanitary नहीं होता, तो जो भी poultry owners है उनके पास एक बहुत incentive बहुत ज़्यादा है नहीं कि वो sanitation पे focus करे. वो rather than that वो क्या करेंगे, वो chickens को antibiotics देंगे कि despite living into such bad sanitary condition, they will be not infected by bacteria. That is fine, it works, but nonetheless it leads to this another issue called antimicrobial resistance. Same is also true, erratic uses of antibiotics for us, that if your body is trying to fight off infection, give it some time. However, what happens is that often, of course, in fighting infection, body raises temperature a lot, it can have different type of inflammatory response. If those inflammatory responses are going beyond control, then you should take medicine. That is why if you are infected, your fever is less, let's say 100, then ideally you can avoid taking medicine. But if it is becoming less 100 to 103, then ideally you should take a medicine to reduce the temperature. Because वो हमारा body का inflammatory response है कि at higher temperature many bacteria die, many pathogens die, but then at higher temperature your other bodily function also suffers. So you actually die because of inflammation. So that can be dangerous. So in any case, my point is that erratic uses of antibiotics, where antibiotic is not required, and using them, that can be problematic, and that can lead to emergence of antimicrobial resistance. ऐसे अभी तक तो हुआ नहीं है, climate change से हो सकता है वैसे. Climate change, the question is that can climate change cause antimicrobial resistance? Theoretically yes, because then we are talking about bacteria as growing temperature, not just their rate of growth, it is also because they have to now survive into higher temperature condition. So if a variant emerges which can survive at higher temperature, it is going to be more infective, that even with your typical body's immune response, it is not going to get killed, right? So yes, it can lead to, although we haven't actually causally linked climate change with antimicrobial resistance, but it can lead to. जैसे last year एक UPSC ने क्वेश्चन पूछा था बायोफिल्म्स पे, कि बायोफिल्म्स दे रखा था, 2-3 स्टेटमेंट दे रखा था. एक स्टेटमेंट ये था कि बायोफिल्म्स कैन कॉज एंटीमाइक्रोबियल रेजिस्टेंट बैक्टीरिया. बायोफिल्म्स देखो क्या होते हैं, अगर आप ठीक से सफाई नहीं करोगे देन क्या होगा कि कहीं पे भी मान लो, जैसे फॉर एग्जांपल एक डोर का हैंडल ही है या साइड का कोई डोर है, वहाँ पे सम इन्फेक्शन बैक्टीरियाज invaded this area, and if proper cleaning, proper sanitation is not being done, then what happens is that in the course of time bacteria secrete certain enzymes, and those enzymes create a layer. Now they will live inside this layer, they are not affected by the outside condition. Many bacteria die because of changing outside condition, But with the help of this layer, now they are like isolated inside it. And that layer is called biofilm. And inside this layer, now they can multiply very easily. They can fulfill their nutritional requirement. And in the process of multiplication, a variant can emerge which can be drug resistant bacteria. So you can find biofilms anywhere, on doors. Even for example, we have found that lot of dental fillings जो होते हैं, they have biofilms. तो UPSC ने question भी पूछा था. But however, जो climate change and finding a bacteria which has become drug resistant because of climate change, we haven't actually found a proof of that, but theoretically it is definitely possible, right? So theoretically it is possible. So a lot of causes are given, but if you think about it, all of these causes, poor hygiene, adding antibiotics to agricultural feed, waste from farm factories community, over prescription of antibiotics, all of this can be reasons behind antimicrobial resistance. And this topic especially becomes very important for India, because in India the number of antimicrobial resistant cases are actually increasing day by day. So lot of steps are being taken. इसमें एक जैसे दो आप अगर आपको याद रखना हो तो दो जो स्टेप आप याद रख सकते हो. वन इज दिस रेड लाइन कैंपेन टू डिस्करेज over the counter sale of antibiotic, and then you have a separate schedule called H1 which is incorporated in drug and cosmetics rule to regulate the sale of antimicrobials कि बिना proper prescription के आपको नहीं मिलेगा. अभी क्या है, आप जाओ आपने सेल्समैन को बोला कि ये सिम्टम है, वो बोलेगा हाँ एंटीबायोटिक ले लीजिए, क्या प्रॉब्लम है. सो यू डू नॉट हैव टू बेसिकली इनकरेज सच टाइप ऑफ प्रैक्टिसेस. हाँ, रेड लाइन कैंपेन उसी का पार्ट है. जो रेड लाइन कैंपेन है लिस्ट ऑफ एंटीबायोटिक्स जो कि आप बिना प्रिस्क्रिप्शन के आप वो नहीं हो सकता, वो आपको नहीं मिल सकता है. It can, under prescription can also cause drug resistant bacteria. For example, not under prescription, not fulfilling your prescription. जैसे for example आपको 5 दिन का आपको दे रखा है, डोज है आपका, and आप 2 दिन में ठीक हो गए, उसके बाद आप you stopped it. Now bacteria has not died, it has weakened. In this weakened version it can evolve and it can lead to a version which becomes immune to the same antibiotic. So yes, that can, even not completing your doses can also become problematic. अभी भी है, अभी भी है. हाँ, that is so under prescription can be also problematic. That, and by the way, a lot of viral infections, why do we prescribe antibiotics for a lot of viral infections? Because when your body is not functioning well, then your immunity is compromised. So you have chances to become infected by bacteria are everywhere. The good thing is that in our healthy condition, we can resist 99% of bacterial infections. There will be very small percentage which your body cannot fight off. But in a compromised immune condition, your bodies will not be able to fight off even a typical bacteria which ideally it could have, right? जैसे a very good example is this during COVID-19 जो second wave था, जो black fungus जो बहुत हो गया था. अब जो black fungus जो है, that is in fact everywhere on all these surfaces which are decomposing. You have this fungi. Fungi, the good thing is that your body will easily kill it. But in a compromised immune condition, especially when you take a lot of steroids, then your body's immunity is compromised. Your body cannot fight off even a simple infection. And that can lead to such dangerous diseases. So, but yes, you are very much right that completing your dose becomes very important, so that proper killing of microbes that occur, so that when they multiply, they are not developing, they are not causing a variant which has become drug resistant. WHO has released some report about how to prevent bacterial pathogens. Forget it. ये सेल्फ एम्पलीफाइंग मैसेंजर आरएनए, इट हैज अ मैसेंजर आरएनए वैक्सीन. सबसे पहले तो क्या होते हैं जो आरएनए वैक्सीन्स हैं, दे हैव अ वेरी डिफरेंट अप्रोच कंपेयर टू टिपिकल वैक्सीन. टिपिकल वैक्सीन्स कैन बी, फॉर एग्जांपल, आई कैन हैव अ व्हाट वी कॉल लाइव एटेन्यूएटेड वैक्सीन, वेयर वी यूज attenuated version of a pathogen. Attenuated means weakened. We do not kill it, but we weaken it. Attenuated version of pathogen to develop a vaccine. When vaccine is prescribed, then because of the weakened version, your body can easily fight off this infection. And body knows that for this particular pathogen, what type of antibody is required. And next time when you are actually infected, your body will produce similar type of antibody. Compared to that, I can also have inactivated vaccine where the pathogen is dead, not in weakened, but it's dead. But even with dead pathogen, body can develop immune response and will be able to remember it. I can have a recombinant vaccine. In recombinant vaccine, we do not require the entire pathogen. We can only use a part of it, a part which we can call antigen, and we are calling it antigen because even with that part, your body can trigger a immune response and it can make a antibody. So antigen simply means that for anything your body can produce antibody, we will call it antigen. So for recombinant vaccine, you do not require entire pathogen. You require a part of it, the part which is enough to trigger an immune response. Often scientists use gene editing techniques, recombinant DNA techniques to ensure that body का जो immune response है वो और ज़्यादा strong हो जाए. Now compared to all of this, जो messenger RNA vaccine है, जो nucleic acid vaccines हैं, DNA और RNA vaccine, they have a very different approach. That RNA molecule का जो बहुत important job क्या है, to produce proteins inside our body. So if we can correctly identify the protein of a pathogen, and that protein, if you know that which RNA molecule can actually lead to production of that protein, and that protein can be an antigen and body can trigger an immune response against it, then nothing like it. So that is how messenger RNA vaccine works. For example, COVID-19 actually became the first case where a messenger RNA vaccine in US was approved. Not one but many, even in India they have been approved as of now. So in messenger RNA vaccine जो कोविड वायरस जो स्पाइक्ड प्रोटीन है, आपने कोरोना वायरस का जो देखा होगा स्ट्रक्चर, जो स्पाइक्ड प्रोटीन, बिकॉज ऑफ दैट वी कॉल इट कोरोना वायरस. सो जो स्पाइक्ड प्रोटीन है, if we can encode an RNA which can lead to a similar production of spiked protein inside our body, so that body can produce antibody and fight off that infection. Now body will remember this protein structure, that for this particular protein structure what type of antibody is required. So that is what RNA vaccine is. Now SEMP amplifying RNA vaccine is that an Indian company, in fact, American company has basically encoded not for just one protein, but it has encoded for few different type of protein which are very similar to each other. So, and we call it SEMP amplifying messenger RNA vaccine. So it simply means that because viruses often evolve also, you have these different versions, different mutations of viruses, and for such type of quickly mutating viruses such as COVID-19, जो self amplifying messenger RNA vaccine है, that can be very useful. So I do not think you have to know the difference, इतने डिटेल में जानने की ज़रूरत है, but in one line compared to a typical RNA vaccine, जो self amplifying vaccine है, that how to make copies of spike protein, but जो self is an improvement over the traditional mRNA as it encodes extra proteins in addition to the vaccine antigen. So it is not just for a typical spiked protein of coronavirus, but it can also encode for few other type of proteins. So body can develop immune response against similar viruses or similar type of infections. Now compared to that, जो DNA vaccine है, it is little bit different. So DNA first produces RNA and then RNA produces protein. So a DNA molecule, जो DNA vaccine होगा, that does not directly lead to production of protein. That first produces RNA transcription, and then which will produce protein, and that protein body can identify quickly as antigen and can produce antibody, and when you are actually infected, your body will be able to fight off that infection. So this is an entirely different approach to develop a vaccine compared to जो typical approach जो अभी तक चल रहा था. The benefit here is that developing nucleic acid vaccines हम ज़्यादा faster हम इनको develop कर सकते हैं compared to जो हमारा पुराना approach था. That is the difference between RNA and DNA vaccine. जो RNA molecules are, they are very much susceptible to degradation. So the question is asking is that different type of vaccines, especially within nucleic acid vaccine, if we have to compare RNA vaccine and DNA vaccines. Now India actually became the first country to approve a DNA vaccine, I think last year in 2021, end of 2021. Indigenous vaccine, I'm forgetting which company, but there was an Indian company which actually made a DNA vaccine, and India became the first country to approve any type of DNA vaccine. RNA vaccine के साथ problem ये है कि जो RNA molecules है, even though they can encode what type of protein has to be produced, but RNA molecules are very much susceptible to degradation. That is why they have to be kept at very low temperature, often in the range of -20, -30, even -40 degrees Celsius. So that makes logistics of vaccine very expensive. That you have to, जहाँ पे भी आप factory में produce करोगे, वहाँ पे भी store करना है, transport करना है to different part of the country. Throughout this supply chain, you have to maintain this very low temperature. Compared to that, जो DNA vaccines हैं, they are less susceptible to degradation. So DNA vaccines can be stored even at little bit higher temperature. Higher का मतलब यहाँ पे room temperature नहीं है, but higher का मतलब is let's say -5, -10 degree Celsius compared to -30 और -40 degree Celsius. इनका shelf life भी ज़्यादा होगा compared to RNA vaccine. So these are some of the differences, and because of reduced supply chain cost, overall DNA vaccines जो है, they will be more cost effective. Not because of production. Production हो सकता है similar हो, but because of the supply chain that you do not have to continuously invest into cold chain, cold storage infrastructure. Because of that, your cost can be less than a typical RNA vaccine. Not necessarily. We can also have a DNA virus. COVID-19 is a RNA virus. हाँ बिल्कुल, मैं बोल तो रहा हूँ. तो it is possible, just because genetic material जो RNA and DNA वायरस जो है तो उसके हम genetic material की बात कर रहे हैं. अब ये confusion नहीं होना चाहिए. I can have a virus which we can call it RNA virus or DNA virus. जो RNA वायरस है उसका जेनेटिक मटेरियल RNA मॉलिक्यूल होगा, DNA वायरस का जेनेटिक मटेरियल DNA मॉलिक्यूल होगा. But however, when we talk about RNA vaccine and DNA vaccine, that has nothing to do with what is the genetic material of virus. That has to do with that जो virus का part which we can call antigen, that will often be a protein. If we can encode that, if similar type of protein can be made inside body with the help of RNA, right? That we are calling it RNA vaccine. जैसे तो DNA, एक second, just a second. So for example, you have this spiked protein. अब ये जो spiked proteins है, we want to ensure production of this spiked protein inside body. For that we can use messenger RNA directly, or we can use DNA which will make RNA, and RNA will make this. Benefit of, even though there is one extra step involved, the benefit here is that DNA vaccine को store और transport करना easier है, cheaper है. DNA of? No, DNA basically which has this encoded information so that it can transcribe into RNA. A synthetic DNA which can transcribe into particular RNA molecule, and that RNA molecule can lead to translation of this particular protein. So just not it has to be derived from what type of, ये जो protein बनाने के लिए किस type का हमको DNA चाहिए. So yes, often we can use different type of organism, we can use synthetic gene of different organism, but our goal here will be that a DNA which can lead to production of this particular protein. That is same as the goal what was in RNA vaccine, right? No, not at all. But still we are not actually producing, we are not using antigen directly. We are allowing production of antigen inside body. That is why the question he is asking is that DNA RNA vaccine hai, won't they be example of recombinant vaccine? The answer is no, they are not, because when we are using recombinant vaccine, then we already are using antigen. so that body can trigger an immune response and can directly produce antibody. In nucleic acid vaccine, we are encoding the information that a particular type of protein has to be produced so that body can trigger an immune response. In that sense, exactly, it has the information to produce antigen so that body can produce antibody. In recombinant, you are directly inserting, basically you are directly using an antigen. Sorry? Sputnik 5 and as well as Covishield जो है, in both of the cases we used a virus called adenovirus. Adenovirus has a very similar structure to coronavirus. So Covishield, which was approved in India, very famous also, very popular also. But for that we actually did not use coronavirus. जो Covishield है, that was an example of live attenuated vaccine. So was Sputnik 5, जो Russia से हमने import किया था. But in both the cases, the virus which was actually used was adenovirus and not coronavirus. And adenovirus had similar structure, not exactly same. So we take adenovirus, we genetically modify them into lab, and with the help of now modified adenovirus, we have developed this vaccine for COVID-19, right? Compared to that, जो Covaxin था, that had a different approach. Covaxin was inactivated vaccine, but that actually did use coronavirus. That a dead coronavirus that was used to develop a vaccine in case of Covaxin. Okay, so conjugate vaccine we discuss कर लेते हैं. जो conjugate vaccines क्या होते हैं? Conjugate vaccine में क्या होता है कि there are certain bacteria, that is specially for bacteria. There are certain bacteria that they have often a layer of carbohydrate, a polysaccharide, a type of carbohydrate molecule. They have their own antigen, a protein, but that protein is, there is a layer of polysaccharide around it. Because of that, whenever you are infected, and often it is for young children का जो immune system है well developed होता नहीं है. So what often happens is that because of this polysaccharide layer, your body cannot actually, body of especially young children cannot actually detect that there is an antigen, and because of that the bacteria will be able to infect. Conjugate vaccine क्या होता है? Conjugate vaccine में हम क्या करेंगे? We will use antigen, but along with antigen we will use another same part of this bacteria with the help of a polysaccharide, that even with the polysaccharide your body's immune response, your body's immune system can actually identify the antigen. So the purpose of conjugate vaccine is very simple, that it is for those bacteria which can outwit body's immune system. And how they can outwit? Because they have a layer of polysaccharide, a carbohydrate molecule, and because of this layer of polysaccharide, body's immune system thinks that it is not harmful. It will not consider it as an antigen. It will not trigger an immune response system. So in conjugate vaccine we are training our body to do exactly that. That even with the layer of polysaccharide, your body can trigger an immune response system. I consider this topic to be more important for mains examination, but nonetheless even for prelims, I think two things should be clear. This is not a new concept. जो One Health का concept है वो नया concept नहीं है. The concept is very simple, that when we talk about human health, then that is not the holistic approach to health, because human health is very much interlinked to environmental health, and human health is also very much interlinked to animal health. How animal health? Think about all the zoonotic diseases. कि जो भी zoonotic diseases हैं, COVID-19 including COVID-19, maybe bats were reservoir of this virus, or there are so many other type of zoonotic diseases. So a proper surveillance of animal health is very important, because lot of those diseases can also infect human beings. तो एक इस तरीके से हम समझ सकते हैं. How environmental health directly and indirectly. For example, think about air pollution. Your environment is not healthy, that will cause breathing related problem, not just in human beings but also in animals. Bad air quality is not good, bad water quality is not good for human beings or for other species including plant. So when we talk about health, we have to adopt an integrated approach of not just on human health but also on environmental health and animal health. And this realization has been very important, and in fact it is a not new idea, but because of COVID-19 lot of focus has been given on this concept of One Health, that we should integrate health of environment, health of animals along with health of human beings, एंड फिर हमारा ऑब्जेक्टिव क्या होना चाहिए कि हम अपना कैपेसिटी इस तरीके से बिल्ड करें, जो हमारा कैपेसिटी बिल्डिंग प्रोग्राम है या जो भी गवर्नमेंट इनिशिएटिव्स है वो इस तरीके से फिर हम डिज़ाइन करें कि दे आर नॉट जस्ट ओनली फोकसिंग ऑन ह्यूमन हेल्थ. बिकॉज एक बहुत हेल्थ का जो एक बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट एस्पेक्ट क्या होता है, वो होता है प्रिवेंटिव हेल्थ केयर. अब होता ये है कि वी ऑफन रिएक्ट दैट यू हैव अ हेल्थ इमरजेंसी एंड यू रिएक्ट टू इट. जो वन हेल्थ अप्रोच है दैट इज अ प्रोएक्टिव अप्रोच, दैट यू आर इन्वेस्टिंग अ लॉट इनटू प्रिवेंटिव हेल्थ केयर, दैट यू आर सर्वेलिंग health of animals, you are talking about ensuring that water quality is good, air quality is good, you are investing into sanitation. तो ये सारी जो चीज़ें, you are investing into waste management, reducing pollution, ये सारी जो चीज़ें हैं, they are example of preventive health care, and that is going to be much more useful if you want to reduce your health care burden. So because of that, this concept of One Health is becoming more and more popular, and recently this topic was in news because a joint plan action was launched by 4 organizations together. 3 I'm very sure all of you already know. United Nations, FAO, Food and Agriculture Organization, that is a agency of United Nations. UNEP, that is also a body of United Nations. WHO, same. And World Organization for Animal Health. Now that is not part of United Nations, but still a very important organization, a global organization which looks after animals' welfare. तो ये जो 4 organizations हैं, all 4 of them have come together and they released a joint plan that how we can develop this concept of one health all across the world. So I actually think that there can be a very good essay on this topic, or there can be a very good question in men's examination also, or even if you do not have a dedicated question, you definitely can use it while writing answer, but for prelims I think some factual information about it should be more than enough. There was a very famous declaration called Pilansburg Declaration of 2001, which talked about wildlife health impact on in developmental project, that how wildlife health actually affects human beings. जैसे एक आपके वन हेल्थ में एक और जैसे कॉन्सेप्ट देख लो, there is a concept नीचे आपका दे रखा है zombie virus, that lot of viruses which were frozen have been part of Arctic permafrost up to higher latitudes. Viruses का क्या होगा? There are viruses that if conditions is not suitable, they will just remain inactive. Many viruses will die also after 1 day or 2 days, but there are viruses which can remain inactive for hundreds and thousands of years. The moment they find a proper host, they will infect that host. And with the global warming, as this ice is melting, the permafrost is melting, lot of those viruses we are exposing ourselves. In future, we are becoming more and more vulnerable to such type of viral infections. ये टॉपिक सिंपली इसलिए न्यूज़ में है कि बहुत सारे जो फंगल इन्फेक्शंस हैं, फंगल इन्फेक्शंस को लेके डायग्नोसिस ट्रीटमेंट जो है वो उसकी बहुत कमी है. दैट इफ देयर इज अ फंगल इन्फेक्शन, देन हाउ टू डायग्नोस देम एट द करेक्ट टाइम एंड हाउ टू ट्रीट देम. सो WHO has released a fungal priority pathogen list that at least for few pathogens, few fungal pathogens, all countries have to invest into their capacity building, so that even at primary healthcare level, even at small hospital level, people can be quickly diagnosed, and with proper diagnosis treatment can also happen. I do not think you have to go through this list. ये जो पूरा लिस्ट है, a critical group of कि इनका तो पक्के से होना चाहिए, high group, medium group, that you need to have tools, you need to have capacity to diagnose fungal infection associated with all of these fungi as well as to treat them. तो ये जैसे ग्रुप होगा वो सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट है, जो क्रिटिकल ग्रुप है, कि यहाँ पे तो इतना तो मिनिमम रिक्वायरमेंट है, बिकॉज दीज आर द मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट फ्रॉम द हेल्थ केयर परस्पेक्टिव. इसमें इन्वेस्ट करना इनटू देयर डायग्नोसिस ट्रीटमेंट इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. सो अगेन अ वेरी सिंपल टॉपिक. आई डोंट थिंक इट इज यू हैव टू गो थ्रू दिस फैक्चुअल इंफॉर्मेशन अबाउट ऑल दिस लिस्ट एंड व्हाट डज इट सिग्निफाई. In this topic, only 2 things you have to know: that there is a food safety, state food safety index. That index is prepared by Food Safety and Standards Authority of India. तो बस एक चीज़ याद, पहला चीज़ तो यही याद रखना है, नीति आयोग नहीं है. Just remember that नीति आयोग releases lot of index, but in this case, it has been released by Food Safety and Standards Authority of India. What they do is that they categorize all the states that how much they are investing into food safety. This is not the first report, in fact I think this is second or third report, and recently top performing state, for example Tamil Nadu, among large states, among small states Goa, among UTs Jammu and Kashmir, they have been ranked the highest, that they have actually invested a lot into food safety. Rather than that, I think you should know these parameters, not their weightage but these parameters, that ये जो index है, कोई भी index आप अगर calculate करोगे तो आप based on certain parameters करोगे. So there are these 4 parameters: consumer empowerment, training and capacity building, food testing infrastructure, 5 parameters, compliance and human resource and institutional data. इसमें कुछ भी रटने वाला कुछ भी नहीं है, आप सब आराम से समझ सकते हो कि why all of these are important. Consumer empowerment, I as a consumer, if I feel aggrieved that I ate a processed food and I feel ill because of that, then I should have mechanisms in place that I can file a complaint, and I can also feel that my complaint has been registered and some steps are being taken against it. Some steps are taken for this entire complaint. Training and capacity, you have to train your people. Food testing infrastructure, without that you cannot actually check if the type of food which is being sold, that is how safe it is. Compliance, all rules and regulations, how properly they are being implemented. एक होता है पेपर पे रूल, एक होता है सही में काम हो रहा है कि नहीं. And finally all of that also requires people, you require resources, you require capacity. फोर्टिफिकेशन इज अ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट आइडिया. जो नॉर्मल हम फूड खाते हैं, जो हमारा बहुत बार स्टेपल डाइट होता है, स्टेपल डाइट में वी ऑफन टेक मैक्रो न्यूट्रिएंट्स. अब मैक्रो न्यूट्रिएंट्स क्या है? प्रोटीन इज अ मैक्रो न्यूट्रिएंट, कार्ब्स इज अ मैक्रो न्यूट्रिएंट, लिपिड्स, फैट्स जो है वो मैक्रो न्यूट्रिएंट है. मैक्रो सिंपली मीन्स बिकॉज वी नीड मोर ऑफ देम. You need more carb, more fat, more protein, but there are a lot of nutrients which you only need a small amount, but without that very small amount your body will not function properly. So the vitamins and minerals hai, they will be example of micronutrients. All vitamins and minerals such as calcium, iron, even sodium by the way. So all of these minerals you require, however, into very small amount, and even with that small amount your body will not function, and their decrease in their number, decrease in nutritional value of these micronutrients in your body, that can actually lead to lot of diseases. तो एक तो सिंपल सा सोल्यूशन ये है, बेस्ट सोल्यूशन ये है कि आपका जो डाइट है, जो हम बोलते हैं प्रॉपर एक बैलेंस्ड डाइट खाओ. तो बैलेंस्ड डाइट क्या होता है कि अपार्ट फ्रॉम दी स्टेपल फूड और फूड ग्रेन्स और पल्सेस यू आर ईटिंग, यू शुड ऑल्सो ईट ग्रीन लीफी वेजिटेबल्स, फ्रूट्स, ड्राई फ्रूट्स, ये सारी चीज़ें आपको खाने की ज़रूरत है. तो ये बेस्ट सोल्यूशन है, बिकॉज इफ यू डाइवर्सिफाई योर फूड सोर्सेज then there is a very good chance that you are receiving all the required nutrients for your body. So that is why eating fruits, vegetables, salad, dried fruits, seeds, all of those things are very important. But there is another solution. अब इसके साथ 2-3 प्रॉब्लम है. पहला प्रॉब्लम है lack of awareness, that many people are not aware about the intake of micronutrient. Second problem is that it is also about lack of resources, and especially lack of resources into urban areas, not in rural areas. Rural areas में फिर भी आपको बहुत सारे फ्रूट्स वेजिटेबल्स मिल जाएंगे. अर्बन एरियाज में तो और कमी है, जो है वो बहुत एक्सपेंसिव है. तो जो अर्बन पुअर है, दे आर मोर वल्नरेबल ऑफन इन दिस केस कंपेयर टू रूरल पुअर. सो बिकॉज ऑफ दिस आइडिया ऑफ फोर्टिफिकेशन इज नॉट न्यू. इनफैक्ट एक टॉपिक दे रखा है लास्ट में आपके इस पूरे मटीरियल में, a method called nixtamalization which was used by Mayans. Mayans were people who lived in Mexico during medieval period, and they also had this fortification technique. So the idea of fortification is कि जो हमारा typical staple food है, उस typical staple food को हम कैसे micronutrients add करें. So this topic is in news because government has a dedicated program that जो भी हमारा public distribution system है, on the public distribution system, food grains, especially rice which is being distributed, a part of that rice has to be fortified rice. That this fortified rice will not just have carb, but it will also have lot of micronutrient. And this has been a proper, this is mandated that all PDS they have to follow that. So deliberate addition of Micronutrient, we call it fortification. जो भी fortified food आप खाते हो वहाँ पे एक प्लस F लोगो आपको दिखेगा. तो कहीं पे भी कोई भी प्रोसेस्ड फूड या कुछ भी आप खा रहे हो, if there is a logo called plus F, it means that there has been a deliberate addition of micronutrient. Although food fortification को लेके एक और जो distinct approach some people think, we talked about GM crop. GM crop का जो एक benefit ये हो सकता है कि we can develop a genetic variety which already has micronutrient. जैसे very good example is a variety of rice known as golden rice. Golden rice is a genetically modified variety of rice, and it has vitamin A. So rice is not known for vitamin A, but जो golden rice है, it also has vitamin A in it. So that is one approach, that you are developing a crop variety which already has micronutrient. But another approach can be that you take a produce and then you add externally, you add later. अब इसके दो तरीके हो सकते हैं. एक जो तरीका होता है, that is simply called dusting. Dusting और coating, यहाँ पे क्या होगा कि we will add micronutrient, but this micronutrient will only be part on the surface of your food. अब इसका एक बहुत बड़ा प्रॉब्लम ये होगा कि कोई भी आप फूड खाते हो, आप वॉश करते हो उसको. जैसे राइस को भी अगर आप फोर्टिफाई कर रहे हो with the help of coating, then the moment you rice it, then there is wash it, then there is a very good chance that lot of this micronutrition that is going to be washed off. So a better solution here is what we call extrusion technique. So in extrusion technique what happens is that आप राइस को for example आप क्या करोगे, राइस को सबसे पहले तो आप इसको आप डस्ट पार्टिकल्स आटे की तरह कन्वर्ट करोगे, then into a mixture you are going to add micronutrients here also, and then there will be another setup where you will develop what we call kernels of rice, very similar to, it will look very similar to rice but not exactly rice, kernels of rice, and those kernels of rice now they have micronutrient, and even after washing those micronutrients, because they are part of internal part of the rice, they are not going to be washed off. So that is a better alternative to attain food fortification. Oral rehydration solution, ORS, simply call it ORS. ORS, Dr. Dilip Mahalanobis, he died recently. He was working in refugee camp during Bangladesh Liberation War. He was awarded with this Pauline Prize. This Pauline Prize is equivalent to Nobel Prize in Pediatrics. And ORS is very important because it maintains electrolyte balance, especially if you are suffering from diarrhea. Then often आपका जो electrolyte balance of body है, वो internal function of body आपका जो है वो बिल्कुल screwed up होता है. So in that case, ORS solutions can be very helpful. Not necessarily the same. जो glucose है उसका main purpose energy पे, उसका main focus है immediate energy देना. जो ORS है वो energy के साथ साथ आपके electrolyte balance को भी ठीक करता है. Right? So glucose can be very useful, especially because of lot of dehydration, feeling आपका energy आपके पास बहुत कम है. So if you need immediate source of energy, glucose can be very useful. But ORS, apart from the glucose part, apart from the energy part, but the major part is maintaining the electrolyte balance inside your body so that your digestion system recovers and your body overall recovers more and more quickly. So and by the way, it is not even given for diarrhea. जैसे for example you are talking about this ये जो recent viral infection है, and यहाँ पे भी if you go, अगर आप बहुत दिन से suffer कर रहे हो, then doctors will often prescribe that rather than drinking water, drink ORS water, कि आपका body कम से कम जो proper electrolyte balance है वो बना रहे. Monkeypox was declared as public health emergency of international concern. Once public health emergency of international concern, that declaration by the way occurs by WHO. When that happens, this is a legally binding agreement by the way. International health regulation है, WHO का एक regulation है, that is called international health regulation. Under this regulation, the moment a disease has been declared as public health emergency of international concern, then it is expected that all the WHO member nations are going to take certain steps. So recently monkeypox was qualified as public health emergency of international concern. Now monkeypox, as the name suggests, it is a zoonotic disease, spreads from monkeys to human beings, but it is a viral disease, not a new one. ऐसा भी नहीं कि ये नया disease है, ये बहुत ही पुराना disease है. In fact, it was first discovered as early as 1960 in some African countries. But from time to time, cases of monkeypox emerge, known for high fever, known for bubbles on your body, and many cases basically emerged into Europe, into different part of the world also. However, at least there is one silver lining, that जो monkeypox का जो spread है, that requires very close and a longer contact. If it spreads from one person to another person, compared to that जो COVID-19 है, that is a much more infective, and वो जो है बहुत ज़्यादा easily transmissible है. So that is why monkeypox did not lead to an epidemic or pandemic. So, but nonetheless, the number of cases had increased significantly, and because of that, it was declared as public health emergency of international concern. Please go through these topics. इसमें ज़्यादा कुछ है नहीं. By yourself, just have to, आपको बस simple सा ये करना है, that you have to know what type of disease we are talking about. If there is a very specific symptom, then you have to know that specific symptom. And if the topic is in news because a new type of medicine, new type of vaccine has developed, then you should know that also. If it is in news because some cases have been found somewhere, you can skip that. तो context तब important होगा अगर कुछ नया treatment या कुछ नया vaccine आ रखा है. जैसे for example, I was going through this. This is important. जो human papilloma virus है, simply called HPV. Why this topic is in news? Because Serum Institute of India has developed a medicine for it. अब ये जो, this is a sexually transmitted virus which can cause actually cervical cancer. So that makes it very important. So two things, if I have to remember this topic, there are two things I am going to remember. It is a viral disease, sexually transmitted viral disease which can cause cervical cancer, and we have developed a vaccine for it. I think more than this is not required. EBV, that is also a virus which can cause brain cancer, but not always. Most of the time it remains harmless, but sometimes it can cause, especially if your immune system is compromised, it can cause damage to nervous system. Zombie virus, I was talking about thawing of permafrost as global temperature rises. Oldest virus, almost 50,000 years old, remain inactive for 50,000 years old, and now it's going to find a new host with the melting of ice. So please go through these diseases. I think there is one which you should know, lumpy skin disease. This was covered a lot at the central level. And why this topic is in news? Because a vaccine has been developed by Indian Council of Agricultural Research. But lumpy skin disease, many animals suffer because of it. Cows, buffaloes, oxen, they suffer because of it. As the name suggests, the skin becomes lumpy. Their productivity, overall how much milk they can provide, that significantly reduces. And again they become weakened and they die also earlier. Very dangerous disease in the sense that many animals suffer because of it. But why this is in news? Because a vaccine has been developed against it. And one more thing I should know about this disease is that it is not zoonotic. That is, it cannot spread from animals to human beings. So three things I will remember from this topic. First, who suffers from it? So many animals, cattle basically, water buffalo, they suffer from it. It's a ये जो है viral disease है. However, at the same time, there has been a vaccine developed against it, but this disease is not zoonotic. It cannot spread from animals to human beings. Sorry? I don't think so. I don't think so. The question is that do we also need to remember that which type of vaccine has been developed for lumpy skin disease? I don't think so. हाँ लिखा हुआ है but मेरे हिसाब से ज़रूरी नहीं है. ये important है. Africa's first malaria vaccine. Malaria, बहुत सारे लोग मरते हैं all across the world because of malaria. Again, this occurs because of a protozoa, and the carrier of that protozoa, which we call vector, that is mosquito, female Anopheles. And recently a vaccine has been approved. I think Mosquirix. The name of this vaccine is Mosquirix, which has been approved for the first time to treat malaria. So please go through this. I think there is a brand name of that vaccine, and you should know about this vaccine. You should know about this vaccine. अब यहाँ पे जैसे I was actually expecting one or two more line that what is the brand name and what type of vaccine it is. So I think it is either recombinant or live attenuated vaccine. Please confirm it. ये जो vaccine है for malaria, either it is live attenuated or recombinant vaccine, but please confirm it that what type of vaccine it is and also know its brand name, कि इसका brand name क्या है. तो ये जो है मेरे लिए important news है, because malaria is a dangerous disease and even in India many people suffer because of malaria. Mosquirix is the brand name, and what type of vaccine it is? Kala Azar, this is also a dangerous disease, type of what we call tropically neglected disease, because it occurs in tropical regions. Many people suffer because of it, and you do not have lot of diagnosis and treatment method. So Kala Azar, that also, sorry, हाँ बहुत high fever, normal fever meaning बहुत high fever, weakness, body ache, severe body ache. इसका diagnosis भी बहुत मुश्किल है, बहुत painful diagnosis है इसका. इसका ट्रीटमेंट जो है वो ट्रीटमेंट स्पेशली अर्लियर स्टेजेस में ज़्यादा ईजियर है, बट लेटर स्टेजेस ऐसे जैसे डिजीज का ऑनसेट होगा द ट्रीटमेंट बिकम्स मोर एंड मोर डिफिकल्ट. सो दिस ऑल्सो, दिस इज अगेन प्रोटोजोन पैरासिटिक डिजीज, बट दैट इज स्प्रेड बाई सैंड फ्लाई बाइट्स. जो वेक्टर है दैट इज अ टाइप ऑफ फ्लाई कॉल्ड नोन एज सैंड फ्लाई, एंड हाउएवर द पैथोजन, द एक्चुअल पैथोजन इज अ प्रोटोजोआ. And in India, especially in some northern states such as Bihar, Jharkhand, Uttar Pradesh and West Bengal, the burden of this disease is very, very high. I am from Bihar, and my father actually suffered from this disease at one point of time. And I actually do know how dangerous this disease is and what type of symptoms it actually leads to. So, and by the way, this is also into a list of what we call neglected tropical diseases, that it often occurs into tropical regions and the type of diagnosis and treatment is very much limited. Trachoma, it basically an eye disease. However, India was declared free of trachoma in 2017. An African country known as Malawi has become free of trachoma. Ideally, you should know about sickle cell anemia. Sickle cell anemia, the reason, the context is that Indian Institute of Science, they have developed a low-cost method to detect sickle cell anemia. It's a genetic disorder. In this genetic disorder, जो आपका red blood cells हैं, they clump, and because of that, overall, you can even because of a very small, आपका जो पूरा transportation of O2 CO2 है, that does not work very well, and even it can also allow जो blood clotting है, वो आपका that can create problem, and a very simple type of injury can in fact often leads to death also. But this is again a genetic disorder, and for such type of genetic disorders, जो gene editing हमने पढ़ा था, that can be a very useful tool. हाँ, जैसे CRISPR-Cas9 हमने पढ़ा था. There is a strategy called Pen Plus strategy, which is specially for non-communicable diseases. अब ये भी एक बड़ा important चीज़ है कि जो communicable diseases है, because उनका burden अचानक से इतना ज़्यादा हो जाता है कि lot of investment goes into that. But majority of people die because of non-communicable diseases. Almost 70% of the deaths because of diseases occur because of non-communicable diseases. Many non-communicable diseases are lifestyle disorders, or because of pollution, or genetic disorders that you cannot spread to other person, but still many people suffer because of it. Very good example will be diabetes, जैसे ले लो, cancer ले लो, lot of genetic disorders, that these are not communicable, but most of the death occur because of these diseases. And a strategy known as Pen Plus strategy devised by WHO, that basically focuses on how to take care of non-communicable diseases. So in one line, just remember this PEN plus strategy is for non-communicable diseases. ये यूपीएससी ने पास्ट में पूछ रखा है ACE2 के बारे में, but ACE2 simply is an enzyme which helps in making COVID is a very infectious agent. It can bind itself. Generally होता क्या है कि हमारा body जो है does not allow lot of viruses or lot of bacteria to enter. But in this case जो COVID-19 का जो spiked protein है, that can bind itself to this enzyme known as ACE2 and it can very easily infect our body. So why COVID-19 is so infectious? Because in general, while our body does not allow to be infected, because of ACE2, the shape of ACE2 is in a way that it can bind itself very easily with spiked protein of COVID-19, and that actually enhances the infection. Incovac, a nasal vaccine developed by Bharat Biotech for COVID-19. I don't think that is important. Shortage of cholera vaccine led to suspend 2-dose and instead of using single dose approach. Again, I don't think that is a very important topic of health. So few important topic of health according to me. Again, this is based on my personal analysis and I can be very much wrong here, right? तो ये बोल देना बड़ा ज़रूरी है. So according to my personal analysis, the topics which are given here, so few things. PEN plus strategy, just in one line what exactly it is. Kala-Jar, first malaria vaccine, that is important. Kala-Jar is important. ये acute encephalitis syndrome and bird flu के बारे में भी जाके देख लेना. इस पे यूपीएससी ने bird flu तो देख लेना because अभी वापस से bird flu का एक केस पहली बार ह्यूमन बींग्स में चाइना में मिला है. तो ये टॉपिक दोबारा से न्यूज में ये था that a bird flu case actually was found in human being into China. Lumpy skin disease according to me is important. Then HPV, that is important. Monkeypox is also important. We have some topics of defense technology. The very first topic, this can be a topic very important for both prelims and mains examination. Solid fuel ducted ramjet. जो ramjet engines हैं, they are what we call air breathing engines. Air breathing engines in the sense that they do not carry oxygen. They fulfill their oxygen requirement from atmosphere. Fulfilling your oxygen requirement from atmosphere can be very useful because then you can carry more fuel. You can also carry more payload. So for example, if I have a ramjet engine, then we can carry more explosive warheads because जितना ज़्यादा heavier vehicle होगा उतना ज़्यादा उड़ाना मुश्किल है. A vehicle का जो weight है that significantly increases because you have to carry both fuel as well as oxygen. More fuel means that you can accelerate your vehicle also at very higher speed, and higher speed basically means that enemies will have very less time to intercept an incoming weapon and neutralize it. So air breathing engine is not a new idea, that has been in place for quite some time now. The most famous air breathing engine is a typical jet engine. There are so many jet pilots as part of Indian Air Force or any Air Force by the way. But जो भी jet engines होते हैं, so by the way, for air breathing to occur, one thing which you have to know that in atmosphere जो oxygen है वो काफी prominent है. You have about 21% of atmosphere is oxygen. Even at higher levels of atmosphere, the oxygen level is not that reduced. Oxygen is available in very high amount. But the problem is that atmospheric pressure as you go up, that reduces. And जो combustion है, so any type of engine that carries fuel It carries fuel, but this fuel cannot burn without oxygen. That is there. Fuel cannot burn all by itself. It requires oxidizer. So whenever oxygen enters from this vehicle, this oxygen will automatically not lead to required compression so that combustion occurs. Combustion occurs at very high compression. जैसे फॉर एग्जाम्पल एक सिंपल सा एग्जाम्पल ले लो, आप जब कार स्टार्ट करते हो या बाइक स्टार्ट करते हो, देन देर इज अ प्रॉपर engine, and that engine is compressed, and that compression leads to ignition, and your engine starts and you can move your vehicle forward. So this compression will not naturally occur because your atmospheric pressure है वो बहुत कम है. जो mixing of oxygen है, that is, if it happens at very low pressure, ignition is not going to happen, your engine is not going to start. So what jet engines do is they use moving part, they use turbines. तो ये जो part देख रहे हो, these are moving parts. As air enters through it, these turbines move very faster. They require a mechanism so that they can move very faster. As the air moves, because of this moving part, this air gets compressed. Now why moving part leads to compression of air? For that you need to understand what we call Bernoulli's theorem, which we do not have to do that. Simply know that this moving part actually allows air to be compressed, and that allows compression to occur, and that allows combustion, that allows exhaust, and your vehicle can move forward with very high speed. So that is a typical approach which we call jet engine. But there is a fundamental limitation to jet engine, and that limitation is that you can attain speed up to perhaps Mach 2, Mach 3. So जो बहुत higher speeds है, we compare them with this parameter called Mach number, which simply means speed of an object divided by speed of sound. That we compare speed of an object with respect to speed of sound. What it means is that if I am saying that something is flying with Mach 1, it simply means that it is flying with speed of sound. Mach 2 means twice the speed. Mach 1/3 means 1/3 of the speed of sound. You get the idea. So Mach number is a unitless quantity. इसका खुद का कोई unit नहीं है, but that number signifies that how fast or how slow you are traveling with speed of sound. तो जो typical jet engines है, they can travel with very high speed. However, that speed will be not more than Mach 3. Mach 3 is the maximum speed you can attain. So they can attain supersonic speed. So based on Mach number, I can have different type of speed. For example, I can have subsonic, which is less than Mach 1. I can have supersonic, which can be from Mach 1 to 5, and I can have hypersonic, which basically means more than Mach 5. That I have an object flying with 5 times more than speed of sound. So the jet engines hai, they can attain speed up to Mach 2, Mach 3, supersonic speed, but not more than that. So to overcome this limitation, engineers started working and they designed what we call ramjet engine. In ramjet engine, first thing which you have to know is that in ramjet engine, there are no moving part. कोई turbine नहीं है. If there are no moving part, then how come compression is happening and how come combustion is happening? And the answer is actually very simple. Because ramjet does not start from zero. जो भी आपका ramjet engine है वो zero पे start नहीं होगा. You need to have a mechanism in place so that आपका जो भी vehicle है, it travels with very high speed, perhaps the speed of Mach 1, Mach 2. At such high speed, whatever air is entering, that air enters with so much high speed that lot of compression happens as this air passes through the combustion chamber, and the compression is so much that the combustion can happen and exhaust can come out from the back. The ramjet engine does not start from zero first. You actually need to have some other mechanism in place so that you can attain very high speed. Once you attain that very high speed, now as this vehicle moves forward, this moving forward, it's with so much of power, so much of speed that the air which is entering inside it, that air is already highly compressed, and that compressed air will lead to combustion and that will lead to exhaust. However, in ramjet people realized that जो ramjet design था, यहाँ पे lot of obstruction of air happened. This obstruction of air slowed down the combustion speed, and overall it slowed down the speed of vehicle. Because of that, ramjet जो है that can operate from Mach 2 up to Mach 7 also. So it will not start from zero. Again remember, जो jet engine है that can start from zero. From zero you can achieve up to Mach 3. जो typical jet engine है, जो ramjet engine है that does not have moving part, but that will not start from zero. You need some other mechanism in place so that you can attain Mach 1, Mach 2. Then ramjet engine can be operated. Once ramjet engine is operated, you can attain up to speed of Mach 6, Mach 7. So ramjet engine का जो range होगा वो Mach 2, Mach 7 तक होगा. But then people realized that ये जो blocking of air है, that is actually reducing the efficiency of overall engine. So they made certain changes कि जो पूरा air है वो smoothly flow करे. The entire flow of air happens smoothly throughout the vehicle, and that smooth flow basically will allow that even combustion occurs at very high speed and exhaust occurs at very high speed. This vehicle is called scramjet. So this is nothing but a further improvement on ramjet engine. That also does not have any moving part, but this is an improvement on ramjet engine just to ensure that this air which is entering inside this vehicle is not being obstructed, it is flowing smoothly. And such type of engine is called scramjet. जो scramjet है that can operate above Mach 4, Mach 5, and maximum जो है उसका limit नहीं है, आपका material कितने time तक sustain कर सकता है, because at very high temperature lot of heat is generated and you actually need to have materials which can sustain very high temperature also. So maximum speed which has been attained inside atmosphere, that is about Mach 10, Mach 11. That people, there are some vehicles which have crossed the barrier of what we call Mach 10, because even within hypersonic, जो Mach 10 के ऊपर का जो speed है, we call it higher hypersonic, that it has actually attained very high speed. Now here is the thing, one more thing which you should know. Attaining hypersonic speed outside atmosphere is not a big deal. जैसे GSLV है, GSLV का जो second, third stage होगा, I'm very sure they travel with Mach 10, Mach 20 also. बहुत सारे जो powerful rockets हैं, they deliver objects with Mach 10, Mach 20, because outside atmosphere there is no air drag. If there is no air drag, कोई है नहीं, there is no opposing force, आप सिर्फ accelerate कर रहे हो खुद को. Because there is no air drag, there is no air friction also, and since there is no air friction, यहाँ पे कोई heat generation भी नहीं है, तो temperature आपका more or less जो है, आपके travel के कारण temperature जो है वो increase नहीं होगा. But if you are flying inside atmosphere with very high speed, then you have to, the higher the speed, the more air drag you are going to face. In fact, initially जो air drag as a force है, that remains proportional to your speed. Higher speed, more force. But later it becomes proportional to square of your speed. That if you increase your speed twice, the air drag becomes 4 times. More air drag means more air friction. More air friction means more heat energy. Any friction will generate heat. More heat energy means more temperature. At Mach 5, Mach 6, the temperature जो बढ़ेगा वो हो जाएगा 1500, 1600, 1800 डिग्री सेल्सियस तक. You need to have materials which can sustain such high temperature. Now we have those materials, they are very expensive, but nonetheless we have those materials. And the other thing which you have to have is, you need to have an air breathing engine so that you do not have to carry oxygen and you can fulfill your oxygen requirement from atmosphere. So why this topic is in news? Because DRDO successfully used its solid fuel ducted ramjet. Ducted ramjet is a small modification, does not exactly become scramjet, but it does allow this passing of air very easily. So even within ramjet engine, duct क्या होता है? Proper pipe जहाँ से air आराम से flow हो सके. So hence the word ducted ramjet. That some modification happens into ramjet which allows smooth flow of air, and with the help of a solid fuel, DRDO has actually attained successfully conducted solid fuel ducted ramjet. And solid fuels are easier, cheaper to maintain. Solid fuel जल्दी से flammable नहीं होंगे. हाँ, कंट्रोलेबल नहीं है, लेकिन एट द सेम टाइम कि हमको कंट्रोल करने की जरूरत भी नहीं है, बिकॉज इस टाइप पे जो हाई फ्यूल्स, जो भी ऐसे मिसाइल्स होंगे, वो ऐसे भी ग्राउंड लेवल से आप कंट्रोल नहीं करते. दीज आर सेल्फ कंट्रोल, जो मिसाइल्स के खुद के कमांड एंड सिस्टम है जो खुद को कंट्रोल करेंगे. और दूसरी चीज ये भी है कि आपको इंजन शट ऑफ वगैरह करने की जरूरत नहीं है. However, at the same time you are correct, because if you do want some control, जैसे many countries are working on scramjet with the help of liquid hydrogen, liquid oxygen, cryogenic fuel. तो स्क्रैमजेट में हम क्या करेंगे, हम क्रायोजेनिक हाइड्रोजन और क्रायोजेनिक ऑक्सीजन यूज करेंगे, दैट विल गिव यू मोर कंट्रोल. बट क्रायोजेनिक इतने हाई स्पीड पे करा पाना, इंजन को ऑपरेट करा पाना, आई एम वेरी श्योर यू कैन इमेजिन द टाइप ऑफ challenges, engineering challenges which are going to happen, that you need to control the flow of air in a way that it does not allow any type of explosion. You have to control it in a way that it only and only causes combustion so that exhaust can happen. So solid fuel, because it is simpler, it is cheaper, hence solid fuel. But nonetheless, this is a very, very important development, because that actually paves the path for what we call hypersonic weapons. That in future, we can develop a hypersonic weapon sorry, that is only a cross sectional view. बहुत ही simplistic view है, जो picture यहाँ पे दे रखा है बहुत simplistic view है. The actual engine is much more complicated than that. Sorry, compressed. अब कंप्रेशन के बिना कंबशन नहीं होता. अब इसके लिए थोड़ा सा फर्स्ट लॉ ऑफ थर्मोडायनेमिक्स और हीट इंजन का थोड़ा सा कॉन्सेप्ट होना चाहिए. बट एक सिंपल सा एग्जांपल ले लो कि नॉर्मली भी जब आप ट्रिगर बना, आप जब फॉर एग्जांपल कार को स्टार्ट करते हो, so that starting it is doing something. I am very sure you know that it is doing something to the car engine. That something is nothing but compression. That you have imagine a cylindrical tank where fuel is there which will be compressed, and that compression will actually lead to what we call ignition. So compression is very important for combustion and ignition to happen, right? जो hypersonic missiles है, ये solid fuel ducted ramjet देखो क्यों important है? Because we have a type of missile which we call ballistic missile. जो ballistic missiles है उनके साथ क्या होता है? That you fire them, they carry huge amount of fuel. You fire them at certain angle with certain speed, but after that you do not guide them. Their path will be guided by Earth's gravitational force. So this path will look something like this, a parabolic path, very similar to if you throw a ball, how that ball is going to fall. आपका गोल क्या है? आपका रूल क्या है यहाँ पे? The moment you threw the ball, it was released from your hand. After that, you are not guiding its path. That path is guided by Earth's gravitational force. That is how ballistic missiles also work, that you do not guide them once they have been released. But what happens is that especially the ballistic missiles have very large range. Imagine the range up to let's say 5000 kilometer. जैसे Agni 5 missile हो गया. जो Agni 5 missile है, that has a range of more than 5000 kilometer. Often these ballistic missiles go into space, outer space, up to height of 1000-1500 kilometer. Then they come back with very high speed. If I have a radar system here, this radar system can look in this entire part of the sky. So this radar can very early of its flight can detect that there is an incoming missile, and if this country is capable enough that it can intercept this missile and destroy this missile in the air itself, it will do that exactly. So जो ballistic missiles है, even though they give you a lot of flexibility, they can carry huge amount of warhead, their range can be thousands of kilometers, but a significant challenge in ballistic missile will be that often they fly at very high altitude. Because of that, they can be intercepted by a radar system and they can be neutralized in the atmosphere itself. Also, they will not be useful for moving target because you are not guiding them. तो moving target के लिए तो use नहीं होगा. Fixed target है, target आपका stationary है, fixed target पे आपको hit करना है. Compared to that, we have another type of missile which is called cruise missile. जो cruise missiles है, they fly inside atmosphere. At their altitude does not change a lot, hence their path is not guided by gravity at all. Because their path is not guided by gravity, they can maintain almost constant altitude. And this missile, for example, even if this radar is there, even if this missile is flying, if let's say for example this range, it is going to be intercepted very late into its flight. And ये जो country होगा, it will have very less time to deploy its weapon system to neutralize this attack. So the cruise missiles, they give you this very important benefit that interception becomes more difficult. Now even within cruise missile, if I can have a hypersonic cruise missile or if I can have a hypersonic weapon, then फिर तो amazing ही है, because it cannot be intercepted and it is traveling with such high speed that any type of radar system or any type of missile defense system, it will not be able to neutralize the threat. As of now, there is not a single country which can neutralize a hypersonic missile threat. The only way it can be tracked is not with the help of radar, because radars are not capable enough to actually track such high speed missiles, but you can still track with the help of, let's say, satellites. That because these missiles travel with so high speed, air friction is going to be very high. Because of that, they will generate lot of heat energy, and heat energy can be seen from infrared camera. ये discuss किया था हमने ये चीज़ कि how I can actually look at heat energy from infrared camera. So if we have a satellite with infrared capability, infrared spectroscopy capability, then we can trace these weapons. But nonetheless, with the help of satellite, neutralizing such type of weapons becomes very difficult. So that is why many countries, US, Russia, China, US and China in fact have, and Russia, they have actually developed hypersonic weapon. And India is also trying to, that India का plan ये है कि next 3-4 साल में we need to have our own hypersonic weapon. So why this solid fuel ducted ramjet, जो पहला topic हमने discuss किया, why this is important? Because with this capability, now we can actually outwit any type of radar system, because with ramjet you can attain very high speed inside atmosphere at very, very low altitude, and interception is going to be very difficult. Not right now. BrahMos is a supersonic cruise missile as of now. But जो BrahMos 2 है, गवर्नमेंट का प्लान ये है कि जो BrahMos 2 है, जो इसका अपग्रेडेड वर्जन ऑफ BrahMos होगा, लेट्स मेक दैट हाइपरसोनिक मिसाइल. कहीं कहीं आपको लिखा मिलेगा अग्नि 5 is a hypersonic missile. But Agni 5, yes, it can attain hypersonic speed as it goes outside atmosphere, and as it falls, it can fall with hypersonic speed. That part is there. But attaining hypersonic speed at very high altitude outside atmosphere, that is not a big deal. When I talk about hypersonic weapon or hypersonic missile, my focus here is on hypersonic cruise missiles, or in general about any type of hypersonic fighter craft. That we have a hypersonic fighter craft which can carry lot of weapons and it can travel with speed of more than Mach 5. Somebody had a question. How? What is the purpose of gliders? I will have to read more about it, but let me give some time. I will read more about it and I will be able to answer this question. The next topic which is given, Chief of Defence Staff, I think this is more important. So let me read about glide vehicle, I will tell you what exactly it is. Anyways, the Chief of Defence Staff है, for me this is more important for paper 3 internal security वाला जो part है उसके लिए ज़्यादा important है. But nonetheless, still even for prelims you should know why this topic is in use, because a new Chief of Defence Staff, Lieutenant General Anil Chauhan, he has been appointed. So this was approved in 2019, Head of Army, Navy, Air Force, 4-star military officer. The objective of this position is that often we have found that the 3 wings of our armed forces, that you need cooperation among them. Now there are cooperations, ऐसा नहीं कि cooperation है नहीं. There is of course cooperation among all the all the wings of armed forces. However, the goal here is to actually have an institutional setup which can look after all the armed forces simultaneously, and a proper setup which can actually further help in collaboration among. So this was actually proposed by Kargil Review Committee, and maximum extended tenure up to 65 years. The roles, responsibilities are very obvious. Department of Military Affairs, he heads the Department of Military Affairs, member of Defence Acquisition Council, Defence Planning Committee, Principal Military Advisor to Defence Minister and Military Advisor to Nuclear Command Authority. So there is a Nuclear Command Authority which is headed by Prime Minister, that how nuclear weapon will be fired if it has to be fired, and the Chief of Defence Staff, he will also be a member of that Nuclear Command Authority. ऐसा एक क्रिटिसिज्म है, तो मैं इस क्रिटिसिज्म पे इस पे डिस्कस करने का फायदा नहीं है, बिकॉज वो मेंस पर्सपेक्टिव से ज़्यादा इंपॉर्टेंट है. तो क्वेश्चन इज आस्किंग इसकी पिछली बार भी जो चीफ थे वो आर्मी चीफ थे, आर्मी से थे, इस बार भी जो CDS है वो आर्मी से है. तो इन जनरल एक एलिगेशन हमेशा से रहा है कि जो आर्मी का है वो बहुत ज़्यादा इंपॉर्टेंट रोल प्ले हमेशा कर रहा है हर एस्पेक्ट में, इन टर्म्स ऑफ पर्सनल, फाइनेंसेस, लॉट ऑफ थिंग्स, एंड दैट हैज़ बीन एक्चुअली a criticism against defense forces into India. Air Force and Navy, they have to be given much more weightage in terms of how much weightage is given to Army. But I think that is a discussion which is more important for mains examination, not important for prelims examination. Knowing the roles and responsibilities is more than enough about Chief of Defense Staff. You're talking about anti-satellite demonstrations. In anti-satellite demonstrations, we often destroy a satellite lying into lower Earth orbit. If it is in higher Earth orbit, it is going to be more difficult to destroy it. There is not a single country which has actually done it for higher Earth orbit. Any country which has demonstrated this capability, few countries have, US, Russia, China and India. 4 countries have demonstrated this capability of anti-satellite, and all countries they have adopted, they have destroyed their own satellite which is in low Earth orbit. Right? So as of now nobody has done it, but I'm very sure it can be done. What type of weapon? What we call kinetic energy weapon. That we collide with do not have to necessarily carry an explosion, but a very powerful kinetic explosion that is even more than enough to ensure that satellite is no longer functional. Just in case of India, we used what we call kinetic energy weapon. Collision with very high speed, that alone is more than enough to destroy the satellite. Right? But different countries can of course adopt different tools. For example, you can always use a laser beam also. Laser beam, many countries are actually working on developing laser beam to destroy satellite. So that can also be done. By the way, we have this satellite based system dedicated for army. So we have this series of satellite known as GSAT, GSAT 7. तो जो हमारे communication satellites हैं पहले, they were called GSAT. Now we call them CMS, communication satellite. But जो GSAT series of satellite है उसमें dedicated जो GSAT 7 series है, that is actually used by armed forces. अब even within GSAT 7 series you have GSAT 7A, 7B. अभी तक ये था कि that was mainly for Indian Navy, mainly for Indian Air Force. Why this topic is in news? Because Indian Army recently tested that one of the GSAT 7 series of satellite that will be dedicatedly used by Indian Army now. So that is the context that why this topic was in news. But in general, just remember that the GSAT 7 series of satellite hai, which has been developed by ISRO, and that is to meet the communication need of our defense services. Sorry? Okay. Let's take a break here. After the break, we will resume the class. There was a question from the, I think, previous or previous to previous class about dark genome. Dark genome is basically part of, we have developed our understanding of genes a lot, especially the genome sequencing. But still a significant part of DNA. What is the purpose of that part? We still do not know. We do know that they are not helping into protein manufacturing, but they are definitely helping into genetic expression, they are helping into evolution. But what is their exact role, a significant part of our DNA, we do not know, and we simply call them dark genome. That we do not understand the role and functions of a significant part of it. That does not mean it has no function. That only means that based on our current level of understanding, we do not know. But one of the most important job, for example, of DNA is protein manufacturing. This expression protein, जो पूरा transcription and translation of protein है, they do not participate into this part. They are non-protein making locus of DNA. They may be playing a very important role in evolution into different type of genetic expressions, but what exactly, that is not clear. So we simply call them dark genome. So there was a question, I think, last class or last to last class. हाँ सेम है, वी आर टॉकिंग डार्क डीएनए, डार्क जीनोम, सेम चीज़ हम बात कर रहे हैं, ठीक है. नॉन प्रोटीन मेकिंग पार्ट ऑफ, जैसे डीएनए का एक सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट जॉब हमने क्या डिस्कस किया था, दैट इट हैज़ ऑल द इंफॉर्मेशन अबाउट व्हाट टाइप ऑफ प्रोटीन्स नीड टू बी मेक. सो जो डार्क जीनोम पार्ट है, जो डार्क डीएनए विच वी कॉल, we do not understand the function, what is the exact biological function, because they are not participating into protein manufacturing. But still they are there and they must be playing some important role, and turns out that majority of DNA is like that. More than 95% of DNA we do not know the function of it, right? Now BrahMos is a cruise missile, a two-staged cruise missile. Solid propellant first stage, second propellant liquid, named after two rivers, one from Russia, one from India. But as of now we produce BrahMos indigenously. And why this topic was in news? Because very good news for Indian defense sector, that we entered into a deal where we are selling BrahMos missiles to Philippines. Often when we read about any type of defense deal, we are buying things from different countries. This is one of those examples where now we are actually selling things. So that is why this context is important. BrahMos is a type of missile which we call it fire and forget missile. And fire and forget simply means that even though it is a cruise missile, it is not guided by ground station. तो सबसे पहले तो BrahMos cruise missile है. Cruise missile का simple मतलब ये होता है that it does not follow, the trajectory is not followed and it is not guided by Earth's gravitational force. But BrahMos still is not guided by ground-based station. Missile has its own guidance system, and that guidance system will be with the help of communication satellite or GPS satellites, but it does not require a ground-based guidance system, and you have an onboard computing system which can actually guide itself. But nonetheless, even then, the path is not guided by Earth's gravity. Because of that, the path is not parabolic. The path is like a cruise path, that it flies at almost constant altitude. Few systems have been in news, like HD-1 supersonic missile of China, or Tomahawk, that is a long-range all-weather subsonic cruise missile. Seabreaker, a precision guided missile, or P-800, Russian supersonic anti-ship cruise missile. Until unless something is very well covered into newspapers for a particular reason, we do not have to know about them into detail. So I do not think any of them is important. ये जो 4-5 नाम दे रखे हैं, इसका मतलब ये नहीं कि पास्ट में यूपीएससी ने क्वेश्चन पूछा नहीं है on missile systems, defense system of other country. At least I can think of 1 or 2 question in last 10 years. जैसे there was a question asked by UPSC on a type of missile, THAAD करके जो पूरा system है, which US places on the border of South Korea. But there was a reason it was in news. North Korea and South Korea was on the verge of war, and because of that it was covered a lot. Or for example, last year UPSC where it did ask in mains examination that जो S-400 है, how it is better than other missile defense system. तो जो अदर मिसाइल डिफेंस सिस्टम है वो भी न्यूज़ में थे. जो इजराइल का आयरन डोम है, दैट वाज इनटू न्यूज़. सो इफ देयर इज अ वेरी प्रोमिनेंट रीजन दैट न्यूज़पेपर्स हैव कवर्ड देम, देन यू शुड नो. So I do not think that you have to remember any of them as such. At max, just know which country and what type of missile. But according to me, they are not very important. But BrahMos पे हमेशा कभी भी UPSC क्वेश्चन पूछ सकती है. That was by NASA. That was by NASA, and it had actually was doing a very important job for some research activity. So that was not a question of defense, it was a question of current affairs from space technology. More than Agni 3, I think Agni 5 is more important. Agni 3 was also in news, but Agni 5 is more important. I think it will be covered into your updated material, but I only expect one question from defense, especially from missile system. And if I have to think about it, then perhaps S-400 and Agni missiles, they are most important topic from missile defense. So Agni 5 hai, that can be an example of what we call intercontinental ballistic missile. So first, it is a ballistic missile. It has a range of more than 5,000 kilometers. It can carry a nuclear warhead of about 1.5 ton. 1500 kg of nuclear warhead, and it is it has 3-staged rocket. All these stages use solid fuel. So जैसे space launches में you can have a rocket with different stages. Even for missiles जो rockets होंगे, if especially the range is very large, then rockets can have different stages. So Agni 5 missile जो है, that is a 3-staged rocket, and all the 3 stages use solid fuel, and it can carry a nuclear warhead of 1.5 ton. So I think this much information is more than important. It is an intercontinental ballistic missile, so automatically it also becomes what we call surface to surface missile, that you fire it from surface and your target will also be located at surface. S-400 UPSC already has asked, but nonetheless still you should know, this is a missile defense system. Missile defense system का purpose क्या होता है? So it will have its own missile weapons तो होंगे, but उससे ज़्यादा important जो होगा, you need to have capability so that you can intercept any type of aerial threat. So it is it's not a simple missile defense system. In fact, it is an air defense system. That this S-400 system, which has been developed by Russia, it actually has a 4-tier defense mechanism. First, it has very powerful long-range tracking radars. These long-range tracking radars can actually intercept any type of aerial threat. And then it has 4-tier weapon system, that it will try to destroy any type of incoming object at the at 400 kilometer, 250 kilometer, 120 kilometer, and even at short range of 40 kilometer. So it is a 4-tier defense mechanism. Because of that, it can intercept and neutralize any type of aerial threat, no longer only limited to ballistic missile, cruise missile, drones also, fighter jets also, and it can neutralize many targets into few seconds. For example, response time of 9 to 10 seconds, it can destroy 80 targets. That is why it is one of the most powerful air defense system of the world right now. And this topic was also in news because if you are doing business from Russia or Iran or North Korea, which are adversaries of US, then US has an act called CAATSA Act, which basically means that they can impose economic sanctions on you. So US का एक act है that if a particular country is dealing with adversaries of US, then sanctions will be imposed. And because India is buying weapon from Russia, it has always bought a lot of weapons in past we have bought from Russia, but this act is new. So there was a debate going on in US House of Senate that should economic sanctions be imposed on India, but nonetheless many senators opposed it. They consider India to be an important ally, and because of that also this topic was in news. Anti-tank guided missile, as the name suggests, these missiles का purpose क्या होगा? To destroy a tank. A very famous anti-tank missile is Nag missile, but in this case this is a main battle tank Arjun, indigenously developed laser guided ATGM from main battle tank Arjun, which can destroy tank of other countries. Another man portable anti-tank guided missile, it can be carried on the shoulder and it can be fired. So another anti-tank guided missile that was successfully flight tested. A vertical launch short range surface to air missile, that is to destroy any type of aerial threat nearby from, it can be for example fired from any station. And this was also recently tested that an aerial threat within the range of 40 to 50 kilometer, we can actually destroy it. हाँ तो उसका there are certain missiles which can do that. दो तीन बहुत सारे mechanism हो सकते हैं. The question is asking is that there are missiles which can completely change their path if they have locked onto a target. उसका कारण एक तरीका बहुत simple है. If they have, so they will try to find the flight pattern and they can use lot of things. For example, they can be guided by GPS satellite, they can be guided by communication satellites, and at the same time they can also be guided by, for example, often an object will have its own heat signature, and that heat signature it can trace. So it is not actually guided by GPS, but it has locked onto a particular signature. Heat signature means that, as I told you, that every object emits certain type of electromagnetic waves. So even a missile can lock onto that particular heat signature, and based on that it can change its flight. So, and for that it does not even require a manual change in flight. Once it locks onto it, the computing system of the rocket has well designed algorithm that once it locks onto a target, it is going to follow that. So it can be, there can be many mechanisms. It can be guided by navigational satellites. It can have its own, often it will have its own computing system, does not require any type of manual change, and it can also use a heat signature of nearby object. But for that, the missile has to be actually in close range of its target. It cannot lock onto from very far away. We have. These are guided missiles, but we can call them, for example, fire and forget missile हम बोल सकते हैं, right? But अब इसमें भी बहुत सारे अलग अलग टाइप ऑफ गाइडेड मिसाइल हो सकते हैं, जैसे इट कैन बी इंफ्रारेड गाइडेड मिसाइल और लेजर गाइडेड मिसाइल. सो डिफरेंट टाइप ऑफ, डिपेंडिंग अपॉन व्हाट इज देयर मैकेनिज्म ऑफ लॉकिंग ऑन टू टारगेट, वी कैन कॉल देम डिफरेंट टाइप ऑफ मिसाइल. Cruise, yes, it can be. So cruise missiles, there are cruise missiles which will be guided from the ground stations, but there are cruise missiles which do not require guidance from ground station. We will call them fire and forget वाला जो concept है. Quick reaction simply means that we are talking about deploying missiles in a very short span of time. If you are intercepting a threat or you have been attacked and you have to deploy a weapon in a very quick span of time, then as the name suggests, quick reaction. Often these quick reaction missiles are very small missiles, surface to air missiles. Very short range, as the name suggests, man portable, a very small weapon system which can be portable and it can be fired. Range will be not very high, but nonetheless it can be very useful to destroy a target which is nearby. Helena is very similar to Nag missile. The only thing is that it is carried by helicopter. So the Nag missile, which is an anti-tank missile, part of our what we call integrated guided missile development plan. So 5 missile systems were developed under this plan called integrated guided missile defense plan. Nag was one of them. And same Nag, if it is being carried by helicopter, we will call it Helena or simply helicopter based Nag missile. So this is also an anti-tank missile, but it will be fired from air to destroy a target on ground. Beyond visual range air-to-air missile, as the name suggests, air-to-air missile simply means that it will be launched by, let's say, a fighter craft, and it is trying to neutralize a target in the air itself. Now beyond visual range simply means that even though with invisible light, if your line of sight is blocked, but still missile can use, for example, let's say infrared signature to lock onto a target. So air-to-air missile recently was tested by DRDO. And Pralay missile, this is a surface-to-surface missile with a range of up to 500 km. A new, again indigenously developed missile. When we talk about our naval power, there are few, I think 2 systems which are the most important one, which you should know. I think INS Vikrant is the most important one, जो मेरे लिए जिस पे क्वेश्चन यूपीएससी पूछ सकती है. देखो डिफेंस पे जो भी क्वेश्चंस होंगे वो बहुत ही ऐसे, टेक्नोलॉजी आ सकता है कि कुछ ऐसे कभी न्यूज़पेपर्स में कवर्ड हो, बट क्वेश्चंस विल ऑफन बी फ्रॉम टॉपिक विच इज़ वेरी वेल कवर्ड, न्यूज़पेपर्स में दे रखा है. ऐसा नहीं कि रैंडमली यूपीएससी ने कहीं रैंडम किसी रिसर्च पेपर से पिक किया है. जो भी क्वेश्चन डिफेंस के आएंगे वो करंट अफेयर्स इंस्पायर्ड होंगे. एंड करंट अफेयर्स भी ऐसा नहीं होगा कि बहुत ही ऑब्सक्योर सा करंट अफेयर्स है, वो प्रॉपर कवर्ड है, एक्सप्लेन्ड. हिंदू ने, इंडियन एक्सप्रेस ने एक्सप्लेन पेजेस में कवर कर रखा है या फ्रंट पेजेस में कवर्ड है, इस टाइप के क्वेश्चंस आएंगे. So Scorpion class submarine called Vagir was delivered to Navy. The Scorpion class submarine is a diesel powered submarine. Submarines require power. Submarines का most important purpose क्या है, that they can stay inside water for very long. They can have both offensive as well as reconnaissance capability. In reconnaissance they remain very silent and collect lot of intelligence about nearby ships and submarines. Because of that, submarines can also be can have applications into research, not even defense application. We just want to know more about depths of ocean, but that is not what submarines are known for. Submarines are known for their applications into defense. So they can stay on the water, but they can stay inside water for very long. Now inside water you need oxygen if you are using diesel. तो जो Scorpion class submarine है, that is fundamentally a diesel powered submarine. But nonetheless, जो diesel powered vehicles होते हैं, they make lot of noise. And if a vehicle is making lot of noise, then that noise, जो sound wave है, that can be intercepted by a nearby sonar device. तो जो radar, which the purpose of radar is to detect an incoming threat in air, sonars do the same thing inside water. The difference is that radars use radio waves, sonar use sound waves. So if there is an engine which is making lot of noise, then sonar devices can intercept it and can know the location. तो submarine का जो पूरा capability है, that it has to remain hidden and then it can attack or collect data about nearby ships and submarines, that capability is compromised. But nonetheless, despite that, जो Scorpion class submarine which we are buying from France, that actually has very less acoustic, despite the fact that it is a diesel powered submarine, जो इसका acoustics है वो बहुत कम है. So by the way, government had announced few years ago that there is a collaboration between France, Indian and France government. Government to government deal happened, but this government to government deal involved an Indian company and a French company. The goal was that with Indian requirements, some elements of technology transfer, 6 Scorpion class submarines will be designed and will be delivered to Indian Navy. The 6 are INS Kalvari, Karanj, Kandheri, Vela, Vagir and Vakshir. ये सारे नाम दे भी रखे हैं यहाँ पे. So Kalvari, Kandheri, Karanj, Vela already have been delivered. Vagir has also been delivered, and I'm very sure that Vakshir is also going to be commissioned perhaps by this year only. I think by this year only it will be commissioned. And all the 6 Scorpion class submarines were built under a project called Project 75 of Indian Navy. It is Project 75I here simply signifies India. The purpose of Project 75I is to further develop our Scorpion or diesel powered submarine capability. One part of that is Project 75. Various class of submarines, as I told you, I can have a diesel electric attack submarine, which will be जो Scorpion class submarine है. हमारे जो पुराने submarines हैं, such as Sindhu Goose और Sindhu Rath, Sindhu Vijay, many of them have been decommissioned as of now, right? But ये जो submarines हैं, जो Scorpion class submarines हैं, they are very powerful and they have very less acoustics. But I can also have submarine, by the way, which can be powered by nuclear power. For nuclear power, for nuclear fission, so these submarines will have a small nuclear reactor, and these small nuclear reactors do not require oxygen, frankly. So they can operate in the absence of oxygen. So they can remain inside water for very long. That is the benefit of nuclear powered submarine. Another benefit is that nuclear power generates lot of energy. So these submarines can be propelled with very high speed, and they can have again both reconnaissance as well as offensive capability. Based on that, we can further divide them into submersible ship ballistic nuclear or nuclear powered attack submarine. So the submersible ship ballistic nuclear, it simply means that this submarine can carry a nuclear weapon. For example, our nuclear powered submarine is INS Arihant. Only one. INS Arighat second, that is under construction. That will be commissioned perhaps this year or next year. By 2024, I think it will be commissioned. So जो INS Arihant है, that is a nuclear powered submarine, and it is also an example of submersible ship ballistic nuclear because it does carry a missile called K4 missile, and that K4 missile carries a nuclear warhead of about 1.5 ton. And that K4 missile has a range of about 300 to 400 kilometers. So short range ballistic missile is carried by INS Arihant. Whenever that happens, that you can fire a nuclear weapon from ground, air as well as water, we call this nuclear triad capability. So as of now, India has this nuclear triad capability. For example, we have fighter craft such as Sukhoi, or we have Rafale, which can carry nuclear warhead. We also have Agni 5 missile, which can be fired from surface based platform, again carrying nuclear warhead. Just let me know when This is resolved. Just let me know when this is resolved. एक बार पूछ लेना उनसे. By the way, this season is really bad because of flu. I think so. For example, I had to cancel, in fact, 2 of my classes yesterday. And one thing which has been proven to be very useful is taking lot of steam. So steam, especially Vicks डाल के, that has been very, very helpful. The reason I'm telling you because I know many people who are suffering from this, and it's not like a typical viral which goes in like 3-4 days. I know people who have suffered for like 10-15 days, and examination is clear, you cannot afford that. So I bought pass my examination. So that is why if you feel onset of any symptom like that, start doing these 2 things. Take a lot of steam, Vicks डाल के, and gargle with again little bit warm water, and that is going to help you a lot. Sorry? Yes, reading about them again and again. That is. But frankly, do not have to think about all of the missiles in that way. जो सबसे prominent missile systems है, जैसे ब्रह्मोस है और अग्नि है, right? जो हमारे integrated guided missile development plan में जो 5 missiles हैं उनके बारे में जान लो. That is, I think, more than enough. हाँ, प्रलय मिसाइल के बारे में आप जान सकते हो, इंडिजिनसली डेवलप्ड मिसाइल बाय DRDO. सो फॉर अबाउट प्रलय मिसाइल यू शुड नो, राइट? सो बट इसका एक ही तरीका है कि यू हैव टू रीड अबाउट देम अगेन एंड अगेन, और तो कोई तरीका है नहीं. some methods, for example, some tool can be used. Agni remains on surface only, so surface to surface ऐसे आप याद रख सकते हो. बट अगेन ये सारे जो ट्रिक्स है वो आप खुद से आप डिजाइन करना पड़ेगा आपको. We can also have a nuclear powered attack submarine. So submarines which are not just carrying weapon. For example, जो INS Arihant है, which can carry a ballistic missile, which is called K4 missile. But a submarine which can actually participate into marine warfare along with all other ships, right? So such type of submarines, we call them nuclear power attack submarine. Compared to that, a submersible ship, ballistic submarine, which basically carries a missile, and that missile it can carry for some time and it can be fired from underwater. एक चीज बहुत क्लियर होना चाहिए कि whenever we are firing underwater missile, then missile is not ignited underwater. There will be a mechanism which will expel this missile outside water. Once it is in the air, then missile gets ignited and then it reaches to its target. तो ये बहुत क्लियर होना चाहिए कि missile, underwater missile is not ignited inside water. INS Vikrant for me is an important topic. Even our very first aircraft carrier. So Vikrant is a type of ship which we call aircraft carrier. As the name suggests, they are a floating air base. So floating air base का मतलब ये है कि inside sea they give lot of flexibility for your fighter crafts, that they can land here and they can fly from here. So proper during an active warfare, ये जो floating air bases है, they are going to be very, very useful. And because of that, their protection is very important. So जब भी आप in fact कोई भी देखना, कोई marine exercise हो रहा हो, जैसे मालाबार exercise अभी होगा, अभी इंडिया, जापान, ऑस्ट्रेलिया, US का जो होता है, तो जब भी exercise होगा, if you have watch a small clip, whenever there will be a aircraft carrier, it will be covered by ships, submarines all around it. So even during proper warfare, aircraft carrier will be covered by ships, submarines all around it. This is so important. Now this news is why this news is significant. First, it is an aircraft carrier which India has built indigenously. At least 3/4 of this INS Vikrant is indigenous. Some parts have been imported, about 25% of it, but 75% of this aircraft carrier is indigenous. That in itself is quite amazing. In fact, I remember just last month there was a news that on this aircraft carrier, for the first time, Tejas, which is our again indigenously built fighter craft, landed and took off. For the first time in our entire history of independence, we had a combination of indigenous aircraft carrier and indigenous fighter aircraft together. हमारा डिफेंस में इतना खराब सिचुएशन रहा है. Every time we have always been dependent upon import. So that was a great news, by the way. So in any case, Vikrant is an aircraft carrier. So Vikrant will be used, and by the way, this is not the first INS Vikrant we had. In fact, it is renamed after the first aircraft carrier, one of the first aircraft carrier of India, which actually played a very important role during Bangladesh war, जो पूरा 1971 Bangladesh liberation war था. In that war, there was an aircraft carrier, INS Vikrant. It was decommissioned after some time, but it has been renamed after that. तो एक तो सबसे पहले ये पता होना चाहिए. It has one of the largest deck. The deck is, I think, about 260 meter. You do not have to remember that information, but it has one of the largest deck. But एक चीज और आपको पता होना चाहिए, that even with 250 meter deck, Vikrant has a deck of this entire length is 250 meter. But even with this much large length, it is not enough for fighter craft to take off and land. So often fighter crafts have to develop certain modifications, certain technologies, so that even with this small airstrip, generally the airstrip आपको चाहिए, that should be about 1 kilometer, even more than 1 kilometer, so that you can take off and you can land. A typical airplane also requires a very large airstrip, and fighter crafts, they accelerate with very high speed and they again land with very high speed. So despite this small airstrip, they can take off and land. ये भी clear होना चाहिए. So we have basically, we can adopt two type of technologies, either Stobar system and Katobar system. So for example, one more thing about INS Vikrant which you should know is that it is based on Stobar system. Now Stobar system simply means that ये जो frontal deck है, if you can look at this picture, it is not a very good picture as of now, it's a very small picture, but the frontal deck hai, that is elevated a little bit. So something like this, a mechanism something like this. There is a little bit elevation here. Now this little bit elevation is actually very important, because this works like what we call ski jump. If you have ever seen a very good skater doing skating, then what happens often is that if they are skating with very high speed, with the help of this elevated part, they can be lifted in the air, right? A good skater can land back also safely. Not good very skater can be dangerous, but nonetheless जो ski jump mechanism, that works like that. That ये जो elevated part है, that provides an assist to the fighter aircraft, that even with a small airstrip of about 250 meter, जो आपका fighter craft है, it can actually land. This is called Stobar system. Compared to that, there is one more mechanism which is called Katobar system. So Stobar system का जो full form है, that is short takeoff but assisted recovery or arrested recovery. Katobar again has catapult assisted takeoff. So Katobar system का जो full form होगा, that will be catapult assisted takeoff but assisted or arrested recovery. So catapult is same catapult which you have played as a kid. The mechanism is same. Catapult में हम क्या करते हैं, जो typical गुलेल है, how it will work, that this rubber, you are basically, when you are pulling this, stretching that catapult, then this potential energy is part which is part of that rubber, and when you release that, that is converted into kinetic energy of this small stone. So that is how a catapult mechanism works. So in Katobar mechanism, what we do is that we will have just below this deck, there will be an engine, often steam engine, and that steam engine जो है, that is powered with the help of steam. You can generate steam from ocean water. So first you have to collect ocean water, purify it, salt हटाना पड़ेगा आपको. Then you have to develop a steam engine, and that steam engine can provide you lot of power. So जो wheels of fighter craft होंगे, those wheels will be connected to this engine, this steam engine, and whenever this fighter craft is making its flight, then it is basically being pushed by this steam engine. So it is not starting from zero. It already has a very high speed, and that high speed is because of this catapult mechanism under the deck. We do not have any Katobar mechanism. We have two aircraft carrier as of now, active aircraft carrier. INS Vikrant and INS Vikramaditya, and both of them are example of Stubar system. But the next one, what is the next? I think Vishal, INS Vishal, which is under Virat or Vishal. अच्छा, INS Virat, so either Virat or Vishal. अभी वो commission हुआ नहीं है, तो important भी नहीं है अभी news हमारे लिए. We also do not know what type of technology it is going to adopt, but there was a news that it may actually use Katobar system rather than Stubar system. And even within Katobar there is a new development these days which is called EMALS system. Vishal है? हाँ, तो there is this called EMALS system. In EMALS system it is electromagnetic uplift system. In EMALS system, that is also a Katobar mechanism, but it does not use steam engine. It uses the power of electromagnetic induction. The benefit of EMALS system is that while steam engine जो है, they lead to lot of wear and tear. जो आपका fighter craft है, उसका wheels जो है हर time आपको replace करते रहना पड़ेगा. जो EMALS system है, उसका wear and tear बहुत कम है. But nonetheless, that is also a catapult mechanism, that there is a mechanism under the deck which is basically pushing the fighter aircraft. Hence fighter aircraft is actually not starting from zero. It already has very high speed, and initial speed is not because of its own fuel, that is because of this catapult mechanism. And ये जो second part है, assisted or arrested recovery, that simply means that on this deck you will have wires, very high strength wires, and जो आपका fighter craft है, that will have a tail hook, something like this, and as it lands, this tail hook will get stuck in one of the wires, and because this wire has lot of strength, it is not going to break, and the moment it gets stuck, the fighter craft will very soon decelerate and will come to a halt. So all of its kinetic energy of this fighter craft, that has been now stored as potential energy of this wire. There will be 3-4 wires on the deck. There is a chance that your fighter craft is going to miss all of these wires, then it has to again fly, and again it has to attempt re-landing. So that also happens, by the way. So fighter craft carriers जो हैं, they are very important during an all-out warfare. हाँ जी. जो मैकेनिज्म, जो रिकवरी पार्ट है, दोनों में सेम है, बट जो लैंडिंग, जो रिकवरी पार्ट है, जो लैंडिंग पार्ट है, वो दोनों में सेम है. जो टेक ऑफ पार्ट है वो डिफरेंट है. इन कैटोबार सिस्टम द टेक ऑफ, as the name suggests, a catapult assist, that you are being helped by another engine which is not part of the vehicle. In Stubar you are not assisted by anything, not by any engine, but you are assisted by this uplifted mechanism, very similar to a ski jump, that you will be thrown into air and from there you can easily fly. Vikrant is Stubar. नहीं बिल्कुल नहीं. कैटोबार स्टोबार दोनों में जो लैंडिंग पार्ट है, दोनों में सेम है. सो व्हाई डू वी हैव टू से इट दैट इट इज पार्ट ऑफ कैटोबार. जो टेक ऑफ है दैट इज डिफरेंट, बट जो रिकवरी पार्ट, नहीं कैटोबार जैसा इसलिए है बिकॉज दैट मैकेनिज्म इज सेम, दैट यू नीड एन अरेस्टर वायर, and that arrestor wire is going to decelerate the speed of fighter craft. So that part is same in both the cases. There is a project of Navy called Project 15B. Purpose of Project 15 was to develop what we call destroyer ships. तो एक दो ये जो शिप हमने इससे पहले देखा था, that was a aircraft carrier. Aircraft carrier जो होगा वो largest ship होगा. But जो destroyer ship है, that actually carries weapon. Aircraft carrier does not carry as such, it is not being carrying weapon, it is carrying fighter craft that it can be used by fighter crafts to take off and land. But जो destroyer ships हैं, they carry missiles, they carry torpedoes, they will have radars and sonars also, radars to look for any type of aerial threat, sonar to look for any type of other ship or other submarine. So these destroyer ships are very helpful during all-out warfare. Now there was a project called Project 15A where we developed a class of destroyer ship known as Kolkata class, INS Kolkata. And recently INS Mormugao, that was inducted into Navy as part of project 15B. So I should know two things here, that there is a project of Navy called project 15B to develop destroyer ship. And why this topic is in news? Because recently INS Mormugao, which is a destroyer ship, has been commissioned by Indian Navy. Then there is another type of ship which is called frigate ship. जो frigate ships होंगे, they will be smaller than destroyer ships, but because they are smaller, they are also faster. And because of this, they have both offensive as well as defensive capability. So as offensive capability, they can carry weapon for minor skirmishes, minor warfare. They can be deployed in deep water. If you have to check piracy activity, they can be deployed. And as a defensive capability, they can be very helpful into supporting your larger ship. That larger ship will often be assisted by frigate ship to protect it. So in that sense, it can have defensive capability. It can also be very helpful in maintaining the supply line, because it can move really faster compared to a destroyer ship. So supply line को maintain करने में काफी useful हो सकता है. And by the way, there is another type of ship which we call corvette, which are often the smallest type of ship. And because they are the smallest, they are the fastest also. And they have lot of utility again in defensive capability. That is, they will assist other larger ship. And they will also be very helpful in coastal patrolling. That you simply have to patrol coastal area, you can use these corvette ships. So this topic was in news because Taragiri, Udayagiri, which are part of a project known as Project 17A, where our goal is to develop frigate ships. वहीं जो Project 17.5I है, Project 75 was a collaboration with France. 75I, again similar objectives. Class जो है, we use a term class in case of ships and submarines. Basically we are talking about, when I use the word Kolkata class, it simply means that there are more than one ship which are very similar to each other, but still they are distinct. So for example, we will call them by different name, such as INS Kolkata, or let's say INS Brahmaputra, or some other name, but nonetheless they belong to similar type of design, similar type of technology, similar capability. Hence we are calling it Kolkata class of submarine. So class of submarine or class of ship simply means that we are talking about similar engineering, similar technology, similar capability, but nonetheless हम जो पहला कोलकाता इसलिए हम use करेंगे because that was the first one which was commissioned, or that is how we have actually renamed it, nomenclature. But this nomenclature often uses, जैसे जो Scorpion class है, we can also call it Kalvari class of submarine, because Kalvari was the first submarine which was inducted, and all other 5 submarines are similar to Kalvari class. So Navy is actually planning to develop in India now as part of Make in India diesel powered submarine, but they did not actually like any of the proposal they received, so they extended the deadline. Not very important. Wagir Wakshir, I already have told you. Aircrafts, drones, helicopters, a commercial flight known as Dornier aircraft flight. Light combat helicopter, as the name suggests, they are lighter, their mass is not going to be very high. Why this was in news? Because HAL has actually developed a light combat helicopter called Prachand. So हमेशा जो भी light combat helicopter होगा, that will be known by this LCH. They can have both offensive as well as defensive capability. Again, very helpful in maintaining supply line, because light combat helicopters जो है, they can make flight much more easily. So they can have both offensive as well as defensive capability. But often to maintain supply line, they are going to be quite useful. A drone we have developed, a stealth drone. Stealth simply means that we will talk about ensuring that this particular object cannot be intercepted by a radar or sonar. That is the meaning of stealth. Stealth का simple सा मतलब ये होता है और stealth features का simple सा मतलब ये होगा that you are trying to hide yourself from radars and sonars. Radars basically use radio waves to detect any type of incoming object. If you can hide yourself, disappear, radar is, you are like invisible to radar, then we will call it stealth system. So recently an indigenous stealth drone has been developed. Autonomous unmanned research aircraft, or in shortcut AURA. And Chinook helicopters, which we bought from US, they are very heavy helicopter, vertical lift platform, and they can carry lot of weapon and lot of personnel simultaneously. There is a question that which one is more efficient among Katobar, Stobar and EMALS. जो efficient term है उसका बहुत सारा meaning होता है. Efficient means how, what type of weapon, how costly, तो बहुत सारा meaning हो सकता है. तो जो Stobar system है that is very helpful for lighter aircrafts. Katobar can be very helpful for heavier aircraft. जो बहुत heavy aircrafts हैं, they cannot actually make their flight from Stobar system. So that is a limitation of Stobar system. जो Katobar system है उसका एक limitation क्या है कि it is more useful for heavier aircraft, but again wear and tear is very high. So that makes it more expensive also. In case of Stobar system, that wear and tear is very less. In that sense, if you are comparing all three of them, Katobar, Stobar and EMALS, then EMALS is the best way forward, because EMALS can work for both lighter as well as heavier combat aircraft, and at the same time EMALS has very less wear and tear. So but nonetheless I should also tell you that EMALS system जो है that is an developing technology. ऐसा अभी कोई है नहीं किसी के पास which fighter aircraft based on EMALS system. Maybe especially for India, maybe perhaps in next few years we will develop a aircraft carrier with EMALS system. So theoretically EMALS system is the best solution. The Tejas you should know. About Tejas you should know, because Tejas, abhi why this topic is in news, because Tejas ka jo upgraded version hai, Tejas Mark II, that has been given a green by ministry. Cabinet committee has cleared Tejas Mark II project, which is going to be even more powerful, larger, carrying more weapon, more speed, everything is going to improve. So jo Tejas hai, which is already part of our Air Force, Tejas is considered as one of the lightest combat aircraft in its own generation. जिस तरीके से हम कैसे मोबाइल में generation use करते हैं 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G, वैसे ही fighter combat aircraft में भी we can use this concept of generation, and the criteria will be different of course. जैसे when we talk about in mobile network, then our criteria was speed, latency, connection density, etc., etc. In case of fighter combat aircraft, it will be capability. What type of capability? For example, how much first capability will be how much weapon it can carry, how much speed it can fly with, how well it can maneuver into air, how well its stealth capability are. For example, can it hide itself with radar, or does it have air to air refueling capability? तो जो जब भी हम बात करेंगे जैसे जैसे चीजें improve होंगी, we will call them a fighter combat aircraft belonging to first generation, second generation, third generation or fourth generation. तो जो Tejas है that belongs to generation 4.5, or some places it is also mentioned that fourth generation. Tejas Mark II will belong to 4.5 generation with 70% indigenization. जो Tejas है that can carry a large warhead, it can have weapons both air to air, air to surface weapons. It can attain a speed up to Mach 2, even Mach 3, so it can attain supersonic speed, and it has been built indigenously. However, in terms of capability, जो हमारे बाकी की जो fighter crafts हैं, for example जो Sukhoi है, which we have bought from Russia, Sukhoi Su-30, or for that matter Rafale, which we have bought from France, they are much more powerful in terms of capability. Kamikaze drone, kamikaze simply means that they destroy a type of weapon system that not only it will destroy the target but will also destroy itself. So kamikaze drones are basically drones which carry weapon. A drone can do so many things. They are very small, because of that इनका जो stealth है वो काफ़ी strong भी होगा. They will not be easily intercepted by radar system. So these drones drones can collect lot of intelligence, that is one benefit, but another benefit of course can be that they can also deliver a weapon. So जो kamikaze drones हैं, they have this weapon system that they will destroy the target as they destroy themselves. Mainly because of the capability. जो नेवी के requirements हैं, that is not matched by तेजस. कि हमारा गोल ये है that we need to have even more larger warhead, more weapon system, more maneuverability, which तेजस does not have. आप एक सिंपल सा एक सुखोई और तेजस के साथ साथ पिक्चर को कंपेयर करके देखना, you will get the difference that, और राफेल और तेजस के साथ को देखना, साथ पिक्चर देखना, अलग अलग पिक्चर देखोगे तो that will you not get a good idea. Just look at the picture anywhere where both of them have been placed together and you will realize that it is a benefit, by the way, it is also a very smallest, lightest combat aircraft, but that also has its own set of challenges. Benefit बहुत सारा ये है कि सबसे पहले तो cost बहुत कम है, that of course is a economic benefit. Another benefit is that it has better stealth feature, but again the type of weapons it can carry, the type of maneuverability, all of those things are limited compared to other combat aircraft. अब ये न्यूज़ कुछ काम का नहीं है. Israel became the first country to allow drones into civilian airspace. Dirty bomb, that was in news because Russia was accusing Ukraine that Ukraine is planning to use a dirty bomb. It simply means that dirty bombs are not nuclear fission based weapon, but they use radioactive material. Dirty bomb क्या होगा कि you will have an explosive substance. That explosive substance is carrying lot of radioactive material. And when it explodes, that radioactive material is going to spread across a much larger area. Now the thing with radioactive material is that the radioactivity does not stop just at the point of explosion. It can continue for tens or even hundreds of years. A very good example is, I'm very sure all of you know that how many children decades after Hiroshima and Nagasaki explosion still were born with some sort of physical deformity. And that is because of presence of radioactivity. So, जो dirty bombs है, we are talking about spreading radioactive material across a much larger area, so that this radioactivity can cause a lot of damage, not just right now, but even many years later. So Russia was accusing Ukraine that they are planning to do something like this. अब dirty bomb बनाना ज़्यादा आसान है, but इसीलिए banned भी है. बनाना आसान इसलिए है because आपको कुछ यूरेनियम को enrich करने की ज़रूरत नहीं है. आप कोई भी lab made radioactive material को आप use कर सकते हो, which can actually cause lot of damage. This topic is more important for if there is a question about indigenization of defense technology in mains examination. This can be very helpful. In case of dirty bombs, nuclear bombs जो है, जो fissile bombs है, they actually are using fission to produce so much of energy that it will lead to an explosion which will destroy a much larger part of a particular region into a very short span of time. That is a separate thing. That will be utter destruction, a complete annihilation of a much larger area into a very smaller point, very small time. That will be a proper atomic bomb or nuclear bomb हम जिसको बोलते हैं. Dirty bomb का purpose ये होगा that it will not lead to complete destruction as such. It will lead to spread of radioactive material across a much larger area. And those radioactive materials will cause lot of damage, not just right now, but many years in fact, because radioactivity does not die down. Sweden has announced that it is going to manufacture this Carl Gustaf weapon system into India. This is a man-portable multi-role weapon system capable of firing lot of ammunition. I think if you are preparing for CDS examination, it can be a useful topic, but I don't think that इतने detail में ऐसे छोटे topics को हमको करने की ज़रूरत है. So in one line, at most if you want to know that it is a man-portable multi-role weapon system, and the topic is in news because Sweden has actually planned to manufacture it. Now Pinaka is important. Pinaka multi-barrel rocket launcher system, named after the bow of Lord Shiva, right? So जो Pinaka है, that is basically a rocket launcher system. It is carried by a truck called Tatra truck designed by Tata, and Pinaka has basically a battery operated mechanism which can be used to fire a rocket, and that rocket actually carries explosive substance up to some kilometer. I think the range is as of now 40 kilometer, but we are planning to actually extend that, the Pinaka extended range up to even 75 kilometers. So very useful for Indian Army. As of now, it is being used by Indian Army, that to destroy a target even 40, 50, 60, 70 kilometer, we can use this rocket. This rocket will be carried by Tatra truck, and it is powered by a proper battery powered operated device which can fire this rocket, and this rocket can carry explosive substances up to few kilometers. नहीं, ये guided नहीं है. Sorry? Rocket is a much larger word. Rocket includes anything which can, for example, expelled into air, being fired into air, has its own fuel mechanism. Rocket बहुत बड़ा word है. When I use the word missile, then I'm talking about a rocket which is carrying a warhead. I have this entire rocket mechanism which is carrying a warhead, but rocket can also carry a satellite. So rocket is a much larger word which can mean lot of things. Missile, the moment I use the word missile, then I'm talking about carrying a warhead. That warhead has to be delivered at some place with very high accuracy and very high speed. DRDO is working on state-of-the-art testing and evaluation facility for sonar system. The sonar, as I told you, surprisingly we are calling it space, mainly because we are obsessed with finding this, not space exactly, but these shortcuts जो है, ये जो simple हमारा जो हर चीज़ को हम एक shortcut बनाना है. So submersible platform for acoustics characterization and evaluation. The purpose of any sonar system will be to basically detect objects on surface of water or inside surface of water. So detect ships and submarines, and for that they use sound wave rather than using radio wave, which is done by radars. They use sound wave. Abhyas, an exercise, high speed expendable aerial target. Again, exercise simply that if there is any type of aerial threat, how we can neutralize it, forget it, not very important. High energy laser system. अब ये एक जो directed energy weapon है, I think this is again a topic more important for perhaps men's examination. But generally अभी तक जो भी हमने चीजें discuss करी हैं, missiles, ships, submarines, any type of fighter craft, all of them are solid objects where we are basically using an explosive substance to destroy, to create destruction. But many countries are working and have already actually developed significant capability into what we call directed energy weapon. So directed energy weapons, they can be perhaps a laser beam, they can be a very powerful electron beam or sound beam or even infrared beam, and different type of these beams can actually do different type of things. For example, जो laser beam है, very intense laser beam can cut through metals. Laser को हम use करते हैं to cut through very powerful metals. It is a light, but intensity is so high that it can easily destroy metals also. So many countries, and by the way, the best part is that if you can design a laser based weapon, then it is not guided by gravity, it is not affected by gravity. Light is affected by gravity. I told you this, general theory of relativity. But the thing is that for light to be affected by gravity, you need a very heavy object, and Earth is not that heavy. You need a star, you need galaxy, a black hole. Earth is not just that heavy that it can affect the straight line path of light. So the best part of such directed energy weapons is that you do not even have to worry about wind, you do not have to worry about gravity. If you can lock onto a target perfectly, then just one laser beam shot can destroy any type of weapon system. US and Israel have developed lot of capability in this regard. You can destroy a target even into space from a laser beam. Or other kind of directed energy weapons can be that even if it is not laser beam, if it is, let's say, electron beam, or if it is a radio wave beam, then even then you can ensure that जो भी incoming weapon है उसको आप एक तरीके से neutralize कर दो. जैसे imagine a drone which is carrying weapon. Drone is either being it is being piloted remotely, or it is being guided by nearby GPS satellite, if you can fry up its circuitry with an electron beam, then that drone is now flying blind. It is just going to crash. It is not going to deliver its weapon system to desired location. So many countries are working in this regard also, that even if you cannot destroy it, you can sever its connection with either a nearby satellite or perhaps to a pilot who is flying it. So, and a lot of development is happening. This DRDO is working on a project called Mission Kali, but we do not have a lot of information about this mission. DRDO has kept it very secret. So in this case, for example, जो high energy laser system है, this DRDO Center of High Energy System, they are developing this high energy laser system. Thermal energy to directly render a target ineffective without using a conventional weapon. And the best part is that such type of energy weapons जो होंगे, they are not affected by wind, not affected by gravity, etc. Even any? That has to be rectified. Which part? They could affect targets across air, ground, sea and space. Do not take this across ground as literal, meaning that it can penetrate inside ground and then hit a target. That capability nobody has. ये capability किसी के पास नहीं है. It simply means that even at very low level, across a small range, you can hit a target. But you cannot hit a target which is at very large distance, because Earth has a curvature. इस अर्थ के कर्वेचर को उसका तो आप कुछ कर नहीं सकते, तो you cannot look beyond Earth's curvature, right? So that should not be literally interpreted that it can actually hit a target from inside ground. Sorry? No. Nobody, India definitely does not have this capability. In fact, using laser entirely underground, that capability nobody has. Sorry. हाँ बिल्कुल, उसको हम रेडियो जैमर्स बोलते हैं. सो ये भी पता होना चाहिए, जैसे फॉर एग्जांपल हम स्टेल्थ की बात कर रहे थे. स्टेल्थ का पर्पस क्या था? दैट यू कैन एक्चुअली न्यूट्रलाइज अ रडार सिस्टम, दैट जो रडार है वो ऑब्जेक्ट को देख ना पाए. तो ऐसे कोई भी टेक्नोलॉजी विच कैन डू दैट, वी कॉल इट स्टेल्थ. नाउ स्टेल्थ यूज करने के बहुत सारे तरीके हैं. एक जैसे तरीका हो सकता है कि रडार्स ऑफन वर्क बिकॉज रडार्स इमिट रेडियो वेव. Into a fraction of second they will emit millions of radio waves and they will go silent, and then they will try to intercept the reflected radio wave. If there is any incoming object in the sky, it is going to reflect that radio wave. Now how much time it has taken for that reflected wave to travel, all of that it can actually determine the position, velocity, direction, etc. All of that can be determined. So it does depend upon this echo, that you have first a radio wave which is being reflected back. So how we can ensure that radar does not detect you? One mechanism can be that there are certain materials which can absorb certain radio wave. You have to use a layer of this. For example, gold has been proven to be very effective, that you have to use a layer of this material. They will not allow the radio waves to be reflected. Radio waves will be absorbed. Because they are being absorbed, nothing is being reflected, radar doesn't know about your presence. Another way is use of radio jammers. Radio jammers के लिए you have to be nearby a radar device. Radio jammer is like noise. जैसे why we do not use sonars into atmosphere? Can we use sonars into atmosphere? Theoretically yes, but why we cannot? Because in atmosphere there are so many sound wave sources. A sonar device will not be able to detect that where exactly this sound wave is. It cannot distinguish between all this atmospheric noise because of different sources. That is why we do not use sonars into atmosphere. So we can do the same thing for a radar device. We can generate lot of radio waves randomly, so that radar waves will they will not be able to distinguish. And even a more sophisticated solution is that we can actually intercept the prevailing frequency of radio wave. We can use similar frequency which allows what we call destructive interference, and the entire radio wave will be destroyed. Radar will become blind. Radar will not be able to detect anything. So such things, they are called radio wave. You'll have to generate very powerful radio beam so that nearby जो radar systems है, they become dysfunctional. Acha, I do not know about that. I do not. He's saying that Balakot airstrike may have one of the fighter craft. The purpose was to actually blind the radar system of enemies. But उसके भी बहुत सारे limitations होंगे. आप completely blind नहीं कर सकते. हर stealth का कुछ ना कुछ अपना एक limitation होगा. कोई भी जो stealth है उसके अपने कुछ limitations होंगे ही होंगे. उसमें detect क्या नहीं हो पाता? You're talking about resource exploration, for resource exploration. अच्छा, bombs, basically weapon systems. But जो sea mines है, what it will, so for example, sea mines कोई moving object तो नहीं है as such. Stationary object है, तो stationary object का presence जो है, it can tell you that there is a surface. How that surface, it's sea mine, how does it tell you that? So even if it is made of metals, it has hit a surface, it has reflected. So for example, a sonar wave can hit a surface, sea surface, it will be reflected. It will tell you that there is a surface. There are tools to actually distinguish between, for example, we know the depth of surface, we can easily calculate that. If things are not at the depth of surface, if you are receiving lot of signals, it also depends upon what we call cross section. Cross section is a concept जो कि ज़्यादा हमको एक्सप्लोर करने की ज़रूरत नहीं है. जैसे फॉर एग्जांपल एक तरीका जो स्टेल्थ का ये है दैट यू रिड्यूस योर क्रॉस सेक्शन. आप अपना एक्सपोजर टू रेडियो वेव और साउंड वेव है वो आप कम कर लो. वो ज्योमेट्रिकली आप कर सकते हो. आप अपने शेप को इस तरीके से चेंज करो कि आपका जो एक्सपोजर टू रडार और सोनार है आप उसको कम कर लो. सो लार्जर शिप के लिए, जितना लार्ज शिप होगा उसके लिए एक्सपोजर कम करना बड़ा मुश्किल होगा. दैट इट एक्सपोजेज इटसेल्फ लेस एंड लेस टू रडार एंड सोनार डिवाइस. But जो sea mines है, often sea mines will not be very large as such, and it will be very difficult for radar system to distinguish. That is why in fact lot of radars also get confused between birds and drones. Radars have to have different tools, sophisticated tools, so that they can correctly distinguish that there is a bird and there is a drone. So that actually has to calculate lot of data, that flight of bird, flight of drone, that will be different. So it is no longer just about collecting the reflected wave, analyzing that data and coming to a conclusion that there is a bird or drone. That also plays a very important role. Again, Russia was accused of this butterfly mines. Looks like toys, but they are dangerous, can be harmful for children. Again, I don't think that is important as such. These mines can be deployed by being dropped from helicopters. Anti-personnel mines. Anti-personnel mines are basically that you are not talking about civilians' life. That आप जैसे for example बहुत सारा जब भी हम war वगैरह की बात करते हैं तो एक purpose हमेशा एक understanding, mutual understanding यहाँ पे at the global level ये है that civilians will not be harmed. Any type of जैसे dirty bomb है, why dirty bombs are banned, why chemical weapons are banned, why biological weapons are banned? Because they actually cause a lot of damage to civilians also. That is of course one reason. That is, there are many more reasons, but that is also a reason. So any type of civilian life, death of children, that of course is not acceptable. We have few topics. I actually think nuclear fusion is a very important topic, so I will complete this topic in today's class. But जो बाकी के topic है हम updated class के साथ कर लेंगे. Updated class में I think lot of topics we already have covered, but I will ask them to have one dedicated class जहाँ पे हम बाकी के topics कर लेंगे along with the other topics given in updated material. But nonetheless, I think this is a very important topic. So let me complete this topic of nuclear fusion. So nuclear fusion. Why this topic is in news? जो context है वो बहुत ज़रूरी है. बहुत बार news का जो context है वो important नहीं होता, but यहाँ पे जो context है वो भी बहुत ज़रूरी है. That there is a lab in US known as Lawrence Livermore Lab that has achieved a net energy gain for the first time using nuclear fusion. So द न्यूज का जो कॉन्टेक्स्ट है दैट इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट, दैट फॉर न्यूक्लियर फ्यूजन टू हैपन you actually have to consume lot of energy. तो न्यूक्लियर फ्यूजन ऐसा नहीं है कि हम इससे पहले करा नहीं पाए, न्यूक्लियर फ्यूजन हमने बहुत बार कराया है ऑन अर्थ, बट दिस हैज बिकम फॉर द फर्स्ट टाइम दैट यू हैव एक्चुअली प्रोड्यूस्ड अ नेट गेन ऑफ एनर्जी. इमेजिन इट लाइक अ बिजनेस, दैट आपने अगर 100 रुपए लगाए, देन योर होप इज दैट यू आर गोइंग टू जनरेट अ रेवेन्यू ऑफ 140 रुपीज 130 रुपीज, कि आपका नेट जो प्रॉफिट है वो 30-40 रुपए हो जाए. If you are investing 100 getting 80, that is not a good business, right? So fusion, we have done fusion n number of times, but for the first time US announced at its Lawrence Livermore lab that they have received a net gain of energy. So that news is very important. This context becomes very important. Apart from that, you should know few things. What is nuclear fusion, how it is different from nuclear fission in terms of process as well as in terms of benefits, and third thing, that why fusion has been so difficult till now. So let's first start with the first question, that what exactly is nuclear fusion. So nuclear fusion, we are basically talking about that lighter nuclei, they are combining together, fusing together to form a heavy nucleus. Now compared to that, जो nuclear fission है, in nuclear fission, a heavy nucleus, for example uranium, which is a very heavy nucleus, it has atomic mass of 235, it can divide into barium, krypton, it can generate neutrons also, and it can produce energy also if it is bombarded by neutron. You do not have to remember the reaction, but you have to remember this thing, that in nuclear fission we are taking a heavy nucleus, and that heavy nucleus, when it is very unstable, it disintegrates into lighter nuclei, and in the process energy is released. Why this energy is being released, that also you should know. This energy is released and it can be calculated with the help of Einstein's mass energy equivalence formula, which simply means that ये जो mass है, if let's call it m1 and let's call this mass as m2, तो आपने अगर जो केमिकल रिएक्शंस पढ़े हैं वहां पे आपने ये पढ़ा होगा कि मास हमेशा सेम रहेगा, जो रिएक्टेंट और प्रोडक्ट का मास है वो सेम रहेगा. न्यूक्लियर रिएक्शन में जरूरी नहीं है. इन न्यूक्लियर रिएक्शन मास कैन रिड्यूस, एंड दैट रिड्यूस्ड मास इज बीइंग कन्वर्टेड इनटू एनर्जी. We know it because of Einstein's mass energy equivalence, where Einstein says that mass and energy are manifestation of same thing. They are not very different from each other. Mass can be converted into energy and vice versa is also true. Energy can also be converted back into mass. So, and by the way, because one neutron produces 3 neutrons, and those 3 neutrons actually can continue this reaction, they will produce 927, that can lead to a nuclear explosion. So this is the mechanism behind developing a nuclear bomb. That we already have achieved. If you can absorb excess of neutron, यहाँ पे जो 3 neutron है 2 आप हटा दो, तो you can control the reaction. And that is the mechanism behind nuclear reactor. Again, we have achieved that for decades now. We have been producing nuclear energy all across the world, including India, for decades now. So fission जो है that is easy. But fusion जो है, fusion is the exact opposite. While in fission you have heavy nucleus getting disintegrated into lighter nuclei, in fusion, for example, a very famous fusion reaction which happens inside stars, that in the core of star, not for the entire star, only inside its core, where hydrogen nuclei, they are fusing together to form helium, and they are producing energy, and that energy again can be calculated with this equation E is equal to mc squared. So this reaction is called nuclear fusion. Now here is the thing, for fusion to occur, we are talking about nucleus to merge together. जो न्यूक्लियर डायमेंशन है, एक न्यूक्लियाई का जो डायमेंशन है उसका रेडियस होता है करीब करीब 10 to the power minus 15 मीटर. So if I am talking about 2 hydrogen nuclei coming together, they are going to face a very powerful repulsive force, and this repulsive force will be there because both of them have protons, and protons will repel each other. ये तो हमने सबने पढ़ा है ना, same charges repel each other. But here is the thing, that if they are very close enough, then there is an attractive force which acts inside the nucleus. That attractive force is called strong nuclear force. This strong nuclear force is more powerful than electromagnetic repulsion. So if they are close enough, then this strong force will start operating and both of these nuclei will glue together. But if they are not close enough, then there is only one force, that is electromagnetic repulsion. And electromagnetic repulsion is again a very powerful force. The only thing which is more powerful than electromagnetic repulsion is strong nuclear force. But the problem is that strong nuclear force का जो range है वो 10 to the power minus 15 meter है. Beyond this, strong nuclear force has zero value. Inside this, it is very powerful. तो ये पहले you actually need to give lot of energy so that two nuclei are close together, close enough that strong nuclear force starts operating and they glue together and form a heavy nucleus. So to overcome this electromagnetic repulsion, you have to actually spend a lot of energy. You have to generate lot of temperature. Temperature has to be very, very high, into millions of degrees Celsius. Only then nuclear fusion is going to be possible. For example, the core of stars have temperature of about 10 to 15 million degrees Celsius, where nuclear fusion becomes possible. So why fusion is so difficult? The answer is very simple, that nuclei, as they come close to each other, they actually face a very powerful repulsive force, and that powerful repulsive force can only be overcome by strong nuclear force. But the problem is that strong nuclear force is a short range force. It only exists inside nucleus. So to ensure that nuclei are closer together, you actually need to give lot of energy, and that energy requirement is the biggest challenge in attaining nuclear fusion. So first you need to give energy. Your hope will be that the energy which you are going to get, that is more than that, and that's when it is a suitable technology. So ये बहुत बार हो रखा था that nuclei have fused together. By the way, on Earth we are actually not trying to fuse hydrogen. We are trying to fuse two isotopes of hydrogen, deuterium tritium. As they fuse together, they will form helium and it will release lot of energy. This is the reaction we actually want to achieve, that we want to fuse two isotopes of hydrogen, deuterium and tritium, on Earth. There have been many initiatives till now. There are few initiatives which you should know, आपके material में दे भी रखा है, दिया होना चाहिए, I think. So there are few initiatives at the global level. The most famous and most important one, apart from now Lawrence Lab, अब तो Lawrence Lab सबसे famous है, but apart from that जो सबसे important आपको और पता होना चाहिए, that is this setup called International Thermonuclear Experimental Reactor. ये फ्रांस में located है. This is a collaboration among many countries. It is one of the largest fusion setup. India is a member. So it is a collaboration among India, China, Russia, US, South Korea, entire European Union, UK also. So all of these countries have come together and they are investing, pouring lot of money into this setup called International Thermonuclear Experimental Reactor, where they are trying to fuse again deuterium and tritium together. There is another very famous, by the way, जहाँ पे भी हम nuclear fusion हम कराते हैं, एक तरीका होता है nuclear fusion कराने का, which is called magnetic fusion. We call it tokamak. I will tell you what is magnetic fusion and what is inertial fusion. I will distinguish between these two. But just remember that this term tokamak signifies that we are trying to attain magnetic fusion. So for example, जो International Thermonuclear Experimental Reactor है, that also is a tokamak device. Now China is a member, but still China has one of the most powerful tokamaks of the world, which very popularly is called China's artificial sun, but it has nothing to do with sun. except that it is trying to attain nuclear fusion. Very similar to how inside Sun nuclear fusion happens. Even India as of now is developing a tokamak of its own called SST, superconducting state tokamak. Not the first one. The very first tokamak we actually developed, it was called Aditya 1 or simply Aditya. Should not be confused with Aditya L1 mission. जो आदित्य L1 मिशन है, that is a mission to observe sun. जो आदित्य टोकामाक है, this has been designed by an organization called Institute of Plasma Research. This works under Department of Atomic Energy. It is situated in Gujarat. And purpose of this Aditya tokamak was that let's create plasma. Plasma simply means matter at very high temperature. Matter के 3 states हमने पढ़े हैं, solid, liquid, gas. But at very high temperature, matter exists into plasma state. The moment temperature is into 1000 lakhs of degree Celsius, जो matter का stage है वो plasma state है. तो जो deuterium और tritium है, they are no longer at gaseous state, they are actually at plasma state. So our goal of Aditya tokamak was that let's develop a plasma of very high temperature. In SST1, we further developed this capability, and in SST tokamak, we want to increase even more temperature. We still haven't started fusion. Maybe in SS2 we will start. Our goal here is that let's first generate very high temperature, create very high temperature condition so that fusion can start. तो ये भी पता होना चाहिए by the way that India even also has its own setup called superconducting state tokamak SST2, and Europe also has a very famous tokamak called Joint European Torus. But all these examples which are mentioned here, all of them are example of what we call magnetic fusion. In magnetic fusion what happens, you will often use a toroidal shaped device. This is an annular region. ये जो मैंने फिगर बनाया तो एनुलर है, बट एनुलर रीजन को 3 डायमेंशन में आप वो कर लो. इमेजिन इट लाइक अ डोनट. अगर आपने डोनट का शेप देखे, सो दैट शेप इज कॉल्ड टोरॉइड शेप. दैट देयर इज अ वैक्यूम इनसाइड दिस टोरॉइड. इन दिस टोरॉइड you maintain very powerful magnetic field. Why do you maintain very powerful magnetic field? Because जो deuterium tritium plasma है, that temperature is millions of degrees Celsius. If it reacts with any nearby material, it will completely vaporize it. We have to ensure that it does not react with, it does not actually come in contact with any of the nearby object. So magnetic field इसलिए चाहिए because we can keep accelerating them and we can keep moving them in this vacuum. They are not going to, magnetic fields will continuously change its direction with, and it will not allow, magnetic field will not allow that it is going to go and react with any of the walls, because if that happens then it will vaporize the entire wall. Such type of approach to fusion, we call it magnetic fusion, where inside a toroid shaped device we create a vacuum condition and where we accelerate deuterium and tritium with very high temperature, perhaps millions of degrees Celsius, so that they can fuse together and they can form helium and can produce energy. So ITR has been doing that for quite some time now. They have actually attained fusion, but they were not able to attain this net gain of energy. So जो why Lawrence lab is in news, because Lawrence lab जो है, by the way toroid shape दे भी रखा है यहाँ पे, this shape, not a very good picture, but this shape जो है, this is called toroid shape. हाँ नीचे भी यहाँ पे भी दे रखा है. So toroid shaped device where temperature is into millions of degrees Celsius, magnetic field is also very high, and that magnetic field has to be very high, otherwise the plasma can escape. It can actually interact with any nearby object and can completely vaporize. We do not want that to happen. However, the Lawrence lab setup hai, that was different. That is different. I don't think there is any picture, but it's like a very small container. Inside a very small container, there is a very small amount of deuterium tritium. And at this small amount of deuterium tritium, that is now being illuminated with the help of very powerful laser light all around it, about 200 of them. I think 192 is the exact number, but 200 laser beams in a very small region, literally into a region like this large. In this large region, into a very small trace of deuterium tritium was kept, and it was illuminated with 200 laser beam all together. It has no other option, the deuterium tritium, it has no other option but to go inward now. They are going to face lot of repulsion because of electromagnetic repulsion, but that is why this very powerful energy, continuous source of energy provided by laser beam is very important. So now they have no other option but to go inward, and that led to fusion. Again, that did not happen for the first time. Even in Lawrence lab that had happened many times, but for the first time they calculated how much energy has been released, and that was a net gain of energy. Now that is a big deal. Now why is it a big deal? That does not mean that fusion को हम use करके power produce करने वाले हैं 2 साल में. It will still take, I think, 10, 15, even 20 years, because we only have figured the science part of it, that we can produce a net gain of energy. But जो engineering part है, that how we can actually replicate it at larger scale, at industrial scale, that part we still have to figure out. So that is why fusion based power is still not going to be a reality for next 10-15 years, despite this great news. Now last question you can ask, that why so much investment onto fusion? By the way, this investment has been going on for past few decades now, 20-30 years, not a single success of net gain, and still people are pouring so much of resources. Why is it so? And there is a very good reason for it, because fusion produces first clean source of energy, very similar to fission, does not release any. I'm finishing my class in like 5 minutes. 5 minutes में खत्म हो जाएगा. Fusion जो है, that produces clean source of energy, very similar to nuclear fission. एक तो ये benefit है, but वो fission में भी है. Fission also produces clean energy. Clean energy in the sense that it does not emit any greenhouse gases. कोई कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड, मीथेन, नाइट्रस ऑक्साइड कुछ रिलीज नहीं हो रहा है. तो ग्लोबल वार्मिंग को अगर टैकल करना है तो दैट कैन बी फिशन एंड फ्यूजन, बोथ कैन बी वेरी बेनिफिशियल. बट फ्यूजन हैज मेनी अदर बेनिफिट कंपेयर टू फिशन. फर्स्ट बेनिफिट इज कि फ्यूजन के लिए आपको क्या चाहिए? ड्यूटेरियम चाहिए, ट्राइटियम चाहिए. ड्यूटेरियम आप पानी में मिल जाएगा आपको, कोई भी पानी ले लो. However, the ratio will be very less. You will have to collect 5,000 of water. Out of that 5,000 liter of water, 1 liter will be deuterium, heavy water. From that heavy water, you can recover deuterium. It is expensive process, but nonetheless, बहुत ज़्यादा environment पे problem नहीं है. Compared to that, fission के लिए आपको क्या चाहिए? यूरेनियम चाहिए. यूरेनियम कहाँ पे मिलेगा? अर्थ के क्रस्ट में मिलेगा. You have to mine it. Mining has its own set of issues, environmental challenges. दूसरा रॉ मटेरियल क्या है? ट्राइटियम. यू नीड ड्यूटेरियम, यू नीड ट्राइटियम. नाउ ट्राइटियम इज नॉट फाउंड इन नेचर. ट्राइटियम हाउएवर कैन बी मेड इनटू लैब. You can use lithium, you can use helium, and as part of nuclear reaction you can make tritium. That is also expensive, but nonetheless with more and more sophistication, more and more technology, it can become beneficial. First benefit, apart from clean source of energy. Second benefit, fusion produces much more energy compared to the same amount of material compared to fission. Fission by the way produces huge amount of energy. एक जो यूरेनियम का अगर मान लो 1 इंच का मेरा pellet है, if I have 1 inch small volume, 1 inch of uranium 235, that is equivalent to more than 1000 kg of coal. आप 1000 kg कोल को जला के जितना एनर्जी आप प्रोड्यूस करोगे, you can produce more than with just 1 inch of uranium 235. So fission in itself produces lot of energy. Fusion produces more than that. Fusion produces much more than fission. That is the second reason. Third reason why fusion is so important. Fission के साथ एक बहुत बड़ा प्रॉब्लम क्या है कि न्यूक्लियर रिएक्टर्स जहाँ पे भी आप यूज करके एनर्जी प्रोड्यूस कर रहे हो, once the process gets completed, it produces lot of dangerous, harmful nuclear waste. Because of that, there is a lot of fear of nuclear fission. Accidents have occurred in the past. Fukushima in Japan, Chernobyl in Ukraine. So accidents already हो रखे हैं. Reactor meltdown हम जिसको बोलते हैं, या जो nuclear waste का जो पूरा एक danger है. Fusion के साथ ये है कि कोई nuclear waste नहीं है. There is no nuclear waste in fusion. Fusion एक टाइम पे इतना कम material होता है. At one point of time, the amount of material is so less that it will be exhausted very soon. It will not lead to any chain reaction. First benefit. Second benefit, fusion requires so much of prerequisite. आपके जो prerequisites हैं वो इतने ज़्यादा हैं कि even if one of the prerequisite is not fulfilled, fusion automatically stops and tokamak or any type of device gets automatically switched off. So there is no threat of nuclear accident with the help because of nuclear fusion. That is another benefit of nuclear fusion. So because of all this benefit, despite so much of challenges in attaining such high temperature, countries are still investing millions and millions of dollars, because if we do become successful, then we can easily produce thousands of gigabytes of power each and every year without worrying that we are causing a lot of environmental destruction. That is the best part. So that is why this news is a big deal, that you are, if it becomes successful, we have a clean source of power, unlimited clean source of power for next hundreds and thousands of years, right? So few things, again I will repeat few things which you have to know here. Lawrence Lab, why it was in news, what is nuclear fusion, why it is so difficult to attain nuclear fusion, and how fusion and fission are different from each other. Any question in this topic? Because I actually do think this is a very important topic for either prelims or mains examination. हाँ बिल्कुल, इनफैक्ट एक्सप्लोजन नहीं होगा, वी कॉल इट इम्प्लोजन. सो एक्सप्लोजन जो है दैट इज spread of energy outward, implosion is inward. So it actually leads to what we call implosion, but that implosion will produce energy, right? So we call it actually implosion, not explosion. But anyways, आपका क्वेश्चन क्या है? नहीं, एनर्जी तो यहाँ पे भी आएगी, एनर्जी तो यहाँ पे भी रिलीज होगा. बहुत तरीके होंगे, जैसे टोकामाक में क्या होगा कि जो टोकामाक का वॉल है वो एनर्जी एब्जॉर्ब हम कर सकते हैं. टोकामाक का वॉल जो है दैट कैन एब्जॉर्ब एनर्जी, एंड उस वॉल से हम उस एनर्जी को यूज कर सकते हैं to heat up a water and move turbine. तो वो तरीके हैं. We have ways to actually capture energy. कौन से किस में? तो ये मैं बता रहा था कि जो भी एनर्जी रिलीज होगा, that energy is going to be released in the form of electromagnetic wave that is going to heat up the walls of tokamak. And those walls of tokamak, as they are heated up, that energy can be absorbed with many materials, thermally conducting materials, and that energy can be used to heat up water. So we have tools for that. Recovering energy from nuclear fusion is, we have tools for that. जीरो देखो तो नहीं बोलना, बड़ा थोड़ा सा वो होगा, हाई एनर्जी प्रोसेसेस, बट हाँ मतलब ऐसे अगर थ्योरेटिकली देखो तो कोई रेडियो एक्टिव वेस्ट नहीं है. बिकॉज यूरेनियम में क्या था, यूरेनियम में आपने देखा बेरियम क्रिप्टॉन है, वो जो बेरियम क्रिप्टॉन है वो कोई स्टेबल एलिमेंट नहीं है, वो रेडियो एक्टिव वेस्ट है बेसिकली, दैट इज डेंजरस. इन फ्यूजन आपने क्या देखा, हीलियम है, 4 2 हीलियम. हीलियम जब बनेगा 2 4, एटॉमिक नंबर 2, एटॉमिक मास 4, दैट इज अ वेरी स्टेबल एलिमेंट, उसको कुछ भी रेडियो एक्टिविटी करने की जरूरत नहीं है. और दूसरा क्या, न्यूट्रॉन निकल रहा है, अगेन नॉट डेंजरस. आंसर इज करेक्ट, यस दैट विल बी अ करेक्ट स्टेटमेंट. हाँ, यू हैड अ क्वेश्चन. per unit mass. चेन रिएक्शन तब होगा. सो देखो, चेन रिएक्शन जब हम बोलते हैं, द क्वेश्चन इज दैट कैन इट लीड टू चेन रिएक्शन. चेन रिएक्शन का मतलब हमेशा ये होता है कि जो आपका आउटकम है, दैट आउटकम इन इटसेल्फ इज एस्केलेटिंग द प्रोसेस. जैसे इन फिशन व्हाट इज हैपनिंग, यू हैव 1 न्यूट्रॉन, you produced 3 neutron. Now outcome is these 3 neutrons, and these 3 neutrons will continue that reaction, right? So this reaction is happening because of the previous reaction. In fusion that does not happen. In fusion you require huge amount of heavy raw material, which will be deuterium, tritium. More the deuterium, more the tritium, more will be the nuclear fusion, right? But the good thing is that if you can sustain fusion for some time, then it can sustain itself. It will produce so much of energy that fusion will keep on going on. However, at one point of time in tokamak or even for inertial fusion, the amount of deuterium tritium we use, that is frankly very less. So that is why we do not have to worry about explosion or something like that. That is so okay. Now that's a very important question. What about fusion bombs or hydrogen bombs जिनको हम बोलते हैं? अब hydrogen bombs actually do work on fusion, but there the goal is they actually use two mechanism. जो भी hydrogen bombs हैं, they use a fission which will produce enough energy, enough temperature so that it can start fusion. So in hydrogen bomb, our goal is not to have a controlled fusion. So in hydrogen bomb, we actually use both fission and fusion. Fission to produce enough energy, enough temperature so that fusion can start, and once fusion starts, that will lead to even more heavier explosion. But the amount of raw material which you are going to use there, that will be much more, and that is why they can cause huge amount of damage. Clearly it is more difficult to fuse hydrogen together. The reason is very simple, that hydrogen molecular जो radius है वो बहुत कम है. हाइड्रोजन के रिपल्शन को, ये जो रिपल्शन है इसको ओवरकम करना ज्यादा प्रॉब्लमेटिक है. कंपेयर टू दैट जो ड्यूटेरियम ट्राइटियम का रिपल्शन है इसको ओवरकम करना ईजियर है. The question is asking, that's a very valid question, that why are we using hydrogen instead of, why we are using deuterium tritium instead of hydrogen? Because in stars it actually occurs because of hydrogen. So why we are using deuterium and tritium? The reason is very simple, because in deuterium tritium overcoming that repulsion is easier compared to hydrogen. In fact, you should also know, although I will not explain it, that even 15 million degrees Celsius inside the core of Earth is not enough to start fusion. However, because these things happen at nuclear scale, where quantum mechanics guides the entire mechanism, in quantum mechanics there is a thing called quantum tunneling, which actually allows fusion to happen. On Earth, whenever whatever you are doing nuclear reactor, कोई भी फ्यूजन बेस्ड रिएक्टर होगा, वहां पे आप क्वांटम टनलिंग नहीं करा पाओगे. क्वांटम टनलिंग के लिए बहुत ही कम प्रोबेबिलिटी होता है क्वांटम टनलिंग हो पाने का. दैट इज व्हाई फ्यूजन जहां पे भी हम कराने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं, यू विल ऑफन फाइंड दैट टेम्परेचर इज इनटू 100 मिलियन डिग्री सेल्सियस. चाइना का आर्टिफिशियल सन है या जो लॉरेंस लिवरमोर लैब है, दे एक्चुअली प्रोड्यूस्ड टेम्परेचर इन द रेंज ऑफ 100 मिलियन डिग्री सेल्सियस, 10 times more temperature than inside the core of the star. Any other question? So let's complete today's class here. जो भी rest of the topics हैं, we will discuss them with the updated material.